Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault. And you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy there.
Got the wrong guy. The dog was biting him.
He roughened him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
9 out of 10 judges prefer watching the Recovery Addict live stream in their courtroom.
The fireworks are not done.
RJ commentary on Pickles. Dati bihiyang commentary. I didn't ask you to interrupt me.
Is
9?
that correct?
Whoa, that was the wrong button. Welcome back. Welcome back. I'm the Recovery Addict. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I'm hitting all the wrong buttons this morning. I almost read it the ASMR song. Welcome. Good to have you here. Rianne K, congratulations. You, my friend, are first in chat. So we're going to send it to you. Internet ownership, everything IP-related worldwide is now your responsibility. There, can you hear me now? That's a little bit better. Alrighty. Where are we at? Let's hit play there. We're coming back right now, so we're coming back to court. Hold tight. Here we go.
We have a hearing today.
What about tomorrow? I think we're right here. We're back.
Shinsky, just before we were leaving, and for housekeeping matters, Your Honor, it was a little bit awkward, but now I just want to make for the record, we move for the admission of Exhibit H, point 1 to 11. We move for the admission of Exhibit I, point 1 to 25.
Any objection to admitting those? I presume they're all photographs, correct? Are they all photographs, Mr. Mueller? They're all photographs?
Yes.
Okay.
They're all his photographs.
Okay, any objection, prosecutor?
No objection.
No? Okay.
Thank you.
I'll admit those.
We're only talking about a select number, just 'cause I don't want to take all afternoon, but you took 141 photographs over probably 2 days, right?
Correct.
Why so many pictures?
It's digital. You just keep snapping.
Because they're cheap.
It's easy to do, and you cover areas, and you look at 2 pictures of the same location from a little different angle, you might be able to see more in it.
Because documenting your investigation is very important, right?
Yes.
In fact, you teach that.
Yes.
And have taught the importance of documenting your evidence, right?
I was going to point out what was not photographed.
And you probably heard the phrase, you can never take too many pictures, just too few pictures.
Correct.
All right. And when you've taught documenting your evidence and how important it is, you ever heard the phrase, and you may have used it, if it's not written down, it didn't happen.
Yes.
You subscribe to that mantra when you're teaching?
Yes.
All right. So when we talk about the excavation, I'm going to show you, sir, just to put, I guess, in perspective, you walked around the house first, am I right?
Yes.
Which is standard part of doing an investigation. Typically, wherever you choose to start, I like to say 12 o'clock, and you just kind of go in a circle and take some big pictures before you get into the narrow and nitty-gritty stuff, right?
Your Honor, I guess, again, I think we're stepping on this. He's not being called as an expert. Now we're asking him how he does a fire scene investigation.
Yes, how he takes pictures and what goes into his mind to take the pictures he does.
I'll allow you to testify factually what he did when he got there, but not as an expert.
I'm not asking for his opinion. This is the factual background.
Well, you can ask him what he did in this case.
The first thing you did was walk around the house and took pictures, correct?
When I got to that point in the investigation, yes.
And you had an understanding of kind of the layout of the house. You remember that?
Yes.
The floor plan of the house.
Yes.
From Brittany, Ms. Stermer's daughter.
Correct.
Right. So you were shown some exhibits, 2 pages. You remember those?
I haven't seen those yet, but I'm familiar with them.
All right.
You may.
These, and I think these were published as Exhibit 7 to the jury, are frankly only marginally better than my handwriting. I'm going to show you now what are a couple of drawings, floor plans, and see if those would help you illustrate your testimony a little bit in terms of where you were looking and what you were trying to find when you were excavating.
Yeah, a cleaned up version of what Brittany gave us.
Okay. You'd be able to help illustrate your testimony with those, correct?
Yes.
And those accurately represent the floor plan as you understood it.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, and move for the admission of Exhibit O, pages 27 and 28.
Okay.
Court will receive those.
The easel is out, but the big post-it note was not returned since the judge told him to move it. He has some poster boards. Looks like he's gone to Kinko's because we have
Page 27 is a floor plan.
So where you can visually see this, feel free.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Page 27 is just a floor plan of the main floor, correct?
Yes.
And as you see on the bottom, the west is heading straight up at 12 o'clock, so the north would be at 3 o'clock.
Correct.
Can everybody see this? All right.
You're sort of
So you
blocking
kind of
our
had an idea of the foyer of the house.
two bald
Foyer
guys.
of the house was in front. We have a pantry and a kitchen and a dining room as we go around the north to the back of the house, right?
Correct.
This bay window was at the back of the house.
Yes.
Right? And then we had the master bedroom in the back, which would be southwest corner, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And the dimensions, as you understood, were accurate, right?
I don't have any dimensions on Brittany's. I'm looking at the prints that came from the township records were not very good.
But they also describe dimensions, right?
Right, yeah.
And you wouldn't have any reason to quibble if it was basically 18 by 18 and then a little bit more on top?
No, I don't have any issues with that.
So one of the things you're doing is, in excavating, trying to dig down and find evidence, you told us, that might help you determine the origin of the fire, right?
Correct.
And the cause of the fire, the cause
Your Honor,
of
I'm going to raise an objection again. We're talking about cause and origin with a person that's not here to give an opinion on cause and origin.
This is why he excavates. This is why he does what he does.
Right, but if he did he give one here in this case?
He has not given any opinion and is not going to be asked to give an opinion about cause and origin in this case.
Any questions on cause and origin, then I find it wrong.
I didn't ask any questions on cause and origin, but I'll move ahead.
He just did. It was literally in your question.
So let's talk about some of these photographs. I want to go
Congratulations, 96.
I keep losing my pencil. On Exhibit H, page 1, oops, is just, would this be your kind of cover sheet?
Yes.
Date 1907, would that be when you received the assignment?
Yes.
And likely, your memory is probably a couple days later, the 11th, you went out there?
No, I would have, I didn't review all of that with the dates, but I received the assignment the day of the 9th, which was probably the day I set up my file.
Okay.
So I could have gotten a call the night before and set it up to go on the 9th, because I interviewed Linda Stermer on 9 and 10.
So that makes sense. You would have at least done some beginning investigation, scene investigation, since you were there.
I don't believe I got there till the 9th.
Okay.
I don't have my laptop with me or my actual photos where you could go in electronically and see what day they were taken.
Let's go to the second picture. I want to go to, let's see here.
He took a picture of his clipboard.
Give me one
That's funny.
second. Photograph 2.
Ooh.
What are you trying to show here?
Just would be the east side of the home. I would call it the front side because the driveway comes into that.
We'll call it the front.
going to buff out.
Which will be down at the
It'll
bottom.
be fine. It'll be fine.
Correct.
Those holes in
you
the
went
front
to-
that show wood, that's where the fireman knocked
So
it
like a
out.
little bit around to the left,
Yes,
part of your walk around.
yes.
Exhibit 6 kind of circles back around, and we're talking about that back southwest corner.
Yes.
Right. What are you trying to depict here?
Be the southwest corner.
Just the general damage?
General overview of the home.
Number 8, a picture of the rear of the house.
Ooh.
Yes,
Same thing, just trying to depict general damage to the house so you can get your arms around what you're going to do next.
correct.
Right. And then 42, should be the next one, is a picture showing some of the inside of the house. You see that?
The red
By
towel.
looking at it, I'm assuming that's probably a picture shot in one of the windows.
All right, I wanted to talk to you about that. Your report talks about how this was a difficult excavation or difficult scene on page 12 of your report, if you have it. You remember it being difficult because there was a whole lot of damage and the roof fell in?
Yeah, it would be, yeah. The farther along the fire is in the home, the more difficult it is to actually investigate.
When you say it's difficult to investigate, why?
You don't have as many indicators, you know, more of the house, more of the room left. Your fire patterns that you might have in a small fire, markings on the wall, damage to the studs are not in that condition. You know, extensive burning here in that center portion.
And extensive collapse.
Yes,
And in fact, safety, I take it, for you fire investigators is paramount, isn't it?
yes,
Which is why I think you didn't do the excavation and you brought an excavator the next time you went out on the 15th.
correct, yeah. You had to get inside to do the excavation at basement level. You had stuff hanging over that may or may not fall down on you.
Right. And because you're concerned about safety, you didn't even go inside the house then, you just took pictures, as I understand it, from the windows that you were describing.
I probably would have gone through the inside as much as I could, just general photos.
Next one is photograph number 47. Can you tell us what that you're trying to describe here?
It's a photograph of the interior with the wire racks there. Oops, let me see.
I think we're dancing around very carefully, I might add, expert testimony here again. The problem is he's showing him the photographs, asking what's in the photograph. Well, as a fire investigator, he can't not but offer some expert opinion in why this photograph is relevant and why it's important. He can't really give a factual witness testimony in this situation, because I've heard him even talk about looking for fire patterns and things of that nature as we've been sitting here. So,
Your Honor, I'm simply asking, what did you take? What does it show?
This is way beyond the scope of direct, even though that is allowed. The court's allowed to limit it as well, and it does seem that you're going
I asked
into
that I have some
expert.
latitude for cross-exam. I'm just going to go through these photos. What were you trying to show?
Okay.
Simple.
I'm going to have you move on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoa.
Then
tried to push
54, what does
ahead.
that picture show?
Picture of
Your Honor,
Sustaining the objection, it's beyond the scope, and it's he's not here as an expert witness unless you wish
Fair
to
enough.
try to lay the foundation.
You are not here as an expert witness, and you have not been asked, despite your experience, to give any opinion testimony in this case by the prosecutor. Is that right?
That's correct.
Give me 1 second.
Judge just neutered his cross-examination. I was interested in the pictures, but we may not get to see them now.
One second, Your Honor.
What do we do? She shut me down. I've got nothing.
I have no more questions for you, sir. Thank you very much for coming. Go Huskies.
That was a win for the prosecution.
Mr. Blair is handling the fire.
All right, I believe we have 3 other witnesses for the prosecution today. One of them is not the girl who was taken into custody. She will be tomorrow.
Stop. Mr. Mueller, is that yours on the podium? Okay.
Housekeeping. I got it. That's what my wife says.
Housekeeping, no, let's just clean up your crap.
Thank you.
He was loaded for bear. He didn't get to use any of it. He must be so mad. Watch him get spicy here next. He had like manuals and training.
Let's start out with this. These questions, if I can, first. You have Defense Exhibit H in front of you still?
Yes.
All right. And looking at these photographs, since they've been admitted here, were these photographs taken before or after you did any excavation or interior examination of this scene?
Would have been before.
Before. So if you're looking at photograph number, looks like a bunch of zeros and 8 at the bottom right corner. Do you see that?
A bunch of zeros, 8. We'll just call it number 8.
Yes.
And does it appear that there's some piles and things in that photograph?
Yes, there is. Outside the sliding door, there's a large pile of building materials and debris. Also, as there is to the right in that photo, which is going to be to the south. There's also stuff under that upper floor deck. Looks like a pile of debris or stuff that had been.
Do you have any idea what that is? As far as where it came from or how it got there?
No, I'm assuming that it probably was pushed out the windows or thrown out the windows.
Foundation calling from the speculate, and then he just said probably, so he doesn't know.
Well, have you moved? It's already asked and answered, so.
Yeah, I was just going to ask basically, if you, and I guess to summarize, do you have any idea how that got there?
No, I didn't witness anyone put it there.
Okay. And with respect to today's hearing, or excuse me, today's testimony, I should say, had you had any contact with Mr. Mueller's office or Mr. Mueller?
No, I don't believe so, other than at one point got a subpoena for files that I, of course, sent to Farm Bureau.
Fair. And had you had any telephonic or email contact with Mr. Kelly?
No, I don't.
On again. Thank you.
And had you had any indication that you were going to be asked any questions about the report that you prepared in this case?
No.
And with respect to your expected testimony here in court, was that limited to the transcripts that you've testified about here some hours ago?
Yes.
And was that all you were asked to prepare for today?
Yes.
And when you're investigating any type of scene, strike that.
Yeah.
When you
that's
were
a bad question.
a state trooper, we'll go back to that level. Witness statements, are they important?
Yes.
Why?
General information, first-hand view of what they saw, what they observed, what they knew.
And as a now a fire investigator, are eyewitness statements important?
Yes.
Why?
The same information, and if they have descriptions of flames, fire, where they saw it, that kind of stuff is helpful in determining where the fire originated.
Would you consider the statements of Linda Stermer to be important to your investigation?
Yes.
Explain why.
She was in the home at the time the fire occurred based on the statements and information, so she would have the best information to provide on any of the events that were there and going on.
And were you aware of how many persons were in the home on January 7, 2007?
As far as I know, it was her and her husband.
And obviously Mr. Stermer is not here to tell us that about what happened, correct?
Correct.
I think his mic is turned down or off. We're picking him up through the attorney's mic. It sounds like the woman who had the bench warrant bonded out and prosecution is going to put her up in a hotel, so she stays the night here. Hopefully,
When you
she's able to testify
are conducting
tomorrow.
your investigation, you were asked questions on cross about finances and marital discourse and things of that nature. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
And are those fairly standard questions you asked during the course of your interviews?
Yes.
And why is that information relevant to your interview?
To try to understand what the normal life and events were for the people that were there, that lived in the home.
And I guess, can you kind of expound upon why that would be important for your investigation?
Just the normal life, what was going on, were there any issues, were there any outside threats from anyone, threats up between each other. We have a standard interview form. You can answer all the questions. You get answers to the questions, but if you don't talk to the person, you really don't know what's going on unless you talk to the person and listen to them, ask questions, and then have a discussion over it.
And very generally speaking, could those questions possibly also yield or point you in the right direction as to the cause of the fire?
Yes.
Red Pen sent me a birthday card last week. On the back it said, my DNA, and it had arrows pointed to where she licked the envelope. That was funny. Is that all the redirect we have for this witness?
Thank you.
Recross, 2 riders, 1 horse. We're back to a different attorney on follow-up.
Mr. Shimsky, did you just say that the interview that you obtain helps you lead to determining the cause of the fire?
It could be helpful.
His mic is off.
What else would be helpful?
Any of the general information. Things that we identify when we go through the investigation. Damage to the home. Electrical equipment needs to be examined. Mechanical equipment needs to be examined to determine whether or not there was a failure or an issue with any of those. And by doing the excavation, you can determine that.
But the interview is the first part of your information that you use to help determine the cause of the fire, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you do anything to corroborate the information you received in the interview?
I guess on the statements with the discussion between Linda Stermer, I don't know how I could corroborate that other than what she explained to me when I asked a question in our discussion.
Well, as an investigator, would you ever talk to other family members that was in the house or that lived in the house?
There was no one else home at the time the fire occurred based on the information.
I'm talking about family members. I didn't say that was in the house the day of the fire, but you knew in your interview that the nucleus of the family existed of three young men, right?
Yes.
Did you ever interview them?
No, I did not. As I said, my job was not the follow-up legwork that goes on outside of the fire scene investigation. The insurance companies will contract generally to another party to separate the fire origin and cause from any other investigation.
You've been shown a copy of your report.
You said corroborate
yes.
with a W. I'm going to count that one.
If you turn to page 7,
objection now as far as we're refreshing your recollection, or we're going to have him testify from the report, because it's just based on past practices. I'm just inquiring.
Is this refreshing recollection? If so, he'll need to look at the report and then put it down.
Yes, but otherwise, further, that he previously testified that he didn't talk to anyone but Linda Stermer.
So if it's a prior inconsistent statement, then you don't need to have him look at his report unless you're refreshing his memory. I'm not clear.
That's why I asked him, did he have his report?
Right. It's just, it looks like he's reading off of the report.
Your witness is reading the report.
Looks like he's reading off the report?
Yes. He's holding it in his hand. So,
and he's looking at it.
What is this for? Is it a prior inconsistent statement?
Yes.
Okay. So
we already did this one.
You can, if he needs, you could ask, what did he previously say?
Yes.
XYZ.
What I thought I was trying to do. Thank you, Judge.
Okay.
May I also raise the question to ask and answer if we're going to ask about people who's talking that was asked by Mr. Mueller on Recross?
I'll allow it.
So, can you review the lower part of your report on page 7?
That's not what it's supposed
Yeah,
to
the
do.
part where it talks about that I interviewed Mr. Matheny, I do not recall that.
Well,
there you go.
You prepared this report, or did somebody else prepare this report?
I prepared this.
You typed it?
No, I would have dictated it and sent it to our office,
Okay.
who does the typing, and then they send it back to us.
And that's the process you do on all your reports, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when I previously asked, did you talk to anyone else to corroborate or to validate any information in reference to Ms. Stermer's interview? You said no.
And I did not recall talking to Mr. Matheny and then looking at the report, his girlfriend, Ms. Calhoun, and also in the report, I did, of course, talk with the fire chief to get the general information from them.
Okay. Now, this was on January the 17th of 2007. January the 17th of 2007.
The 15th.
January 15th. If your numbers sometimes could be, because your report starts out with saying that your date was on January the 7th. Now, Judge, if I could just do my cross, I will be finished and I will sit down.
I object to him objecting.
Okay.
I respect Mr. Kelly's right to do his cross, but I just
do my job, Judge.
But we need to do it with all the rules, Your Honor.
I'm going to overrule. It's a leading question, but it's cross.
Just so we can get a clarification in reference to dates. On page 5 of this document, your report, contact with insured, on January the 7th of 2007, would that be a typographical error?
No.
Okay, so that's the date that you actually got, you made a contact with someone in reference to the Stermer house?
Yes.
Fire?
Yes.
Did the insurance company contact you on January the 7th?
I'd have to look. I have the date that I opened my file on the 9th.
Right.
And I would have received the file. They would have called or sent it into the office. The office would have notified me and then would have set up a file and sent it to me electronically.
Okay.
And I don't have in my report the exact date that I was contacted. No, it was, I received Rodney Thulmer, Farm Bureau of Insurance, contacted Kirby Bailey, on January 7th, request origin and cause investigation of a fire that occurred at the Stermer residence January 7th, 2007, and that's on page 4.
So you were contacted the same day of the fire?
Correct. After reviewing this, yes.
Okay. So now on the 15th of January, you have a conversation with Michael Matheny, right?
Yes.
What did you contact Mr. Matheny at?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to ask that answer.
He hasn't answered. I haven't even asked him where he contacted Mr. Matheny yet.
I don't remember this, so I'll overrule that.
What was the question?
Where did you contact Mr. Matheny to interview him?
He was either at the fire scene, he came over, or I may have gone to his home. I don't recall. They live right next door.
So that's something that you can't validate in your report where you interviewed Mr. Matheny, right?
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't recall whether it was on the site.
Okay. And did you interview Miss Connie Calhoun the same day?
Todd, I've got a link to my songs. Soon I'll link to all the songs I got.
No, I don't believe that I talked with Connie. I have in my report information that Mr. Matheny referenced about what him and Ms. Calhoun were doing on the day of the fire. They were leaving to go bowling when they noticed the smoke at the Stermer home.
But you reached out to them to find out what they knew about the fire. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, that more than likely, yes.
How did you get their information?
That's the link.
Probably from the fire department.
Beg your pardon?
Probably from the fire report.
From the
the fire department report.
Or from the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department?
That's possible.
Okay. And the information you obtained from Mr. Matheny, you also found out that there was some clothing that had been taken out of Mr. Matheny's truck.
Objection, hearsay.
Your report.
Your Honor, in the court ruled my objection of hearsay first.
Yeah, I'll sustain
All right.
the objection.
Now, for clarification, are these the only other individuals that you interviewed in reference to the Stermer fire?
Yes, I believe so.
And the further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Blair, any other?
I have some very brief follow-up.
Okay.
Would it be fair to say that when you're working for an insurance company, you're kind of only a piece of the insurance investigation?
You're just a cog in the
And
machine.
you were hired in this case to do investigate the fire, is that correct?
Correct.
And I think you may have touched on this earlier when it comes to finances or other aspects that you may have learned through your interview, you turn that over to a different person in the insurance company?
Correct, yeah. The insurance company would hire someone separate, and I would have nothing to do with that.
So it's fair to say, I guess, in one of these types of cases, there's like an insurance investigative team that kind of works on these.
Yes.
Overruled, I'll allow it.
The witness is now running over the judge, too.
And you made this original report you've been asked to review approximately 18 years ago?
Yes.
And I think I've already asked this, but you were not asked to review it in advance of today's testimony, is that correct?
No, I was not.
Is there a way that law enforcement can request a copy of your insurance report?
Yes, there is.
And you have knowledge of that from possibly working in the state police or other ways?
Yes. Yeah.
How's that done?
Section 29.5 of the Fire Prevention Code provides for the release of insurance file information on a claim when requested by law enforcement. And law enforcement has a form they fill out for their investigation, documents they're trying to get. They send that to the insurance carrier, and if they approve it, the law says that they shall provide the claim file documentation.
And just because I feel like this has been danced around a little bit, did you prepare your report or any of your investigation for law enforcement?
No.
Thank you. No further questions.
Can we be done with this poor guy? He already made him read 90 pages of transcript. This is his last job so he can retire. He's on retainer until this one's done. Please, let him go home. All his coworkers have retired years ago, and he's still hanging out because of this case. He did hold his own. Did a great job. Maybe a little eager to...
We're good, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Jury, any questions of this witness?
Don't go home yet.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, we have some questions from the jury. I forgot about them. These will be great. They're always good. So, okay, so here's the updates. Please don't spoil anything. I've got 6 more minutes uploading the baseball bat beating trial closings, and as soon as that's done, I will start uploading the verdict, which I do not know yet. Please don't spoil it in chat. There are some people who want to watch that later, so we will have that. Those are going to be uploaded on the Top Mark Media channel. As soon as it's finished being uploaded, of course, it will need to process for a little bit because it is a 39 gigabyte file, which is big, and we'll go from there. All right, jury gets questions as well. We forgot. It's been so long since we had jury questions. Like, it's been since Thursday. It's crazy. But state has at least 3 more witnesses after him. Defense, get up there. Get up to the table. We're reviewing questions here. So the Top Mark Media channel is over there. Thank you very much. Appreciate the subscribes over there as well. Looking forward to the kids testifying. That's going to be very insightful. I hope they ask the right questions. And if they don't, I hope the jury asks them. I hope they ask what Todd was like. Did he have other people build the fire for him? Was it like him to be sitting in his chair and not say goodbye when they went to the mall for the day? What was different that morning? What did they smell? What did they see? What did they know was going on? Fair number of questions here. Tried the link up to the Top Mark Media that is on your page. It does not work. Oh, we'll have to fix that. Let me look on my page. YouTube.com, Top Mark Media. That should work. It works. The link on my page works for me. I'm not sure why it didn't work for you. But where was the van when they left? Does Mom normally drive the van into the backyard at ramming speed? After all that, did he say what started the fire? No, he did not. Misbehaving says, I get the 404 page not found when I click. Let me add a little bit to it. There we go, publish. I added the HTTPS to it. It wasn't on there before, so that should fix it. Try it again. See if that did a quick correction. Link's working for you now? Lots of questions, or lots of fight over the questions, one of the two. We don't get to hear these, unfortunately. I'm sure lots of new words are being used. It looks like the judge has pretty much sorted everything out. Everyone's going to go back, and we get to ask questions.
Determined under the law not to ask some of the questions that have been presented. But I do have some questions that I will be asking you, sir. No objection from counsel. If you know, was Linda aware that your interviews with her were being recorded?
Yes.
Are there, and if you know, are there any recordings or transcripts of any other interviews other than Linda's?
No, there are not.
Okay. Why?
I believe I just had a brief conversation with Mr. Matheny. I may have been at the fire scene or at his home, and I just took notes from that.
Okay. Thank you. Counsel, any follow-up questions in light of those questions and answers?
Is that a fairly common practice in your line of work for certain persons you interview to just take notes and then memorialize it in a report later?
Yes, homeowner, someone that was involved in or at the scene of the fire, normally you would record those, and if it's door-to-door neighborhood canvas, that kind of thing, you would just take handwritten notes on it.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kelly, any questions?
Just brief. Did I understand that you said you did not record any of the other interviews?
No. The interview of Mr. Matheny or the fire chief, no.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
Jury, any other questions in light of those questions and answers? Nope. Is this witness excused from subpoena, counsel? Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Oh, no objection.
No objection? Okay.
Yes,
you're
we
done,
object.
and you're excused from your subpoena obligations. And I guess other than your own materials, you can hand me the other.
Yeah, this is all defense, that's prosecutor.
Okay, none of that's yours?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, the baseball bat closings have all uploaded. Their processing now might take a minute.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Siderby? Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Your Honor. If you call Don Williams to the stand, please.
The verdict is uploading now. I have not watched it yet. Don't spoil it for us. All right.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Is it a
Please have a
rent-a-cop?
seat, and when you're settled, I'll have you give us your full name and spell your last, please.
For state police.
Is Don Galoose, Goulooze.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Galoose, what is your current occupation?
I am a deputy with the Berrien County Sheriff's Department assigned to commercial enforcement with the road department.
How long have you been in that role?
12 years.
And what did you do prior?
I was road patrol for the Berrien County Sheriff's Department.
And what was your role or your occupation in January 7th of 2007?
I was a road lieutenant on the day shift and just assigned a supervisory position for the Sheriff's Department.
That's still Berrien County Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And were you called to assist with an investigation of a house fire on January 7th?
Yes.
And actually, I believe you didn't go out on January 7th. It was the next day. Is that correct?
Correct.
So it would have been January 8th of
January
2007? And why were you called to assist?
Part of my extra duties is I was an accident investigator, and we had equipment for measuring crime scenes, accident scenes, and everything. We call it a total station. It's a laser measuring device. and they had, Van Buren had requested me to come out to a site from, at that point, was a house fire, and measure the scene for them.
So is this something that requires specialized training?
Yes.
And is this also a specialized piece of equipment?
Yes.
And not every department has this piece of equipment, is that correct?
No, at that time, the Berrien County Sheriff's Department had one, and Michigan State Police had a few of the units.
And you called it a total station, is that correct?
Yes.
And what does this total station do?
Total station measures with a laser beam the items that you want for a CAD drawing or scale drawing. So you would set up the tripod, that would be the control point, and then you would pick a reference point, and everything from those 2 points to the object you wanted to measure, so it's like a triangulation. And as long as that reference point is there, you could go back today, set up in that same location, and put everything back in those spots.
So it's a way of just getting accurate measurements of whatever you're trying to measure on that scene?
Yes.
And like you said, you could measure it back then, and then you could actually still go back with that same piece of equipment and have the same measurements today.
Yes. Talking about laser or LiDAR?
Did you go to the scene at 66598 County Road 215 Lawrence to do these measurements?
Yes.
And you used that total station?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 8.
I'm guessing
there
total
are 4
station's
pages there. Could
expensive.
you flip through them and tell me if you recognize them?
Yes, these are copies of the scale drawings that I did. The full scene one is in a scale drawing of, I believe, 1 inch is like 65 feet. And the other ones were in a scale, it was supposed to be 1 inch equals 20 feet. So these are my drawings.
Those are the drawings that you did based on your total station measurements?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time I'd move to admit People's Exhibit number 8 into evidence.
Stipulate.
Yes, and there are 4 pages, Your Honor. Permission to publish? So I'm going to have you go. We'll put the first one up on the screen.
Total stations. The one I pulled up first was $47,000. They can run over 100K, says Nikki. Pretty cool. Now I want one. It's not in the budget.
So we have up the first page. Could you describe this for the jury and what we're looking at? And I do have a pointer if you need me to point out anything in particular.
Okay. This is all the measurement points that I took on that date. This is the whole scene from the roadway to the fence in the backyard.
And so I want to point out to you the long line going across the center of the page. Can you see that?
Yes.
What is that depicting?
That is the driveway.
And I want to point out then you have a marking here that I've got my pointer on just underneath the driveway kind of section. Can you see that?
The circular one would be a pile of rocks that were there at the scene.
And then just to the right of the pile of rocks, I see that there's a double line. Can you describe to the jury what they're looking at here?
Those were tire tracks that were pointed out to me by the detective there, that he wanted those measured.
And were those flagged?
Yes.
And I'm going to go down to the bottom right-hand corner. You can see there's like 3 little boxes down in the right-hand corner. What are we looking at here? What does that drawing depict?
One of them was a trailer, and the other one were some vehicles, if I remember right, that were just sitting there, and they had pointed out to have those just included in the drawing.
And right then above the vehicles, there's like a V shape. What is that?
That would have been one of my control points, so that's where I would have set up the tripod with the laser.
And there's a dot in the tire tracks. Can you describe to the jury what that dot is in the tire tracks?
That is where I was directed that the victim had been laying. There was a flag there, so I had measured that also.
That was also flagged for you by law enforcement?
Yes.
And I want to go to the square then at the end of the driveway. Is that the house?
Yes.
And what is immediately to the right of the house where I have the red dot?
That was also a marked area where they said the van had been parked, and it was no longer there when I got there.
Somebody's telling him often for the truth.
I can rephrase the question.
Oh, okay.
Was that section also marked for you by law enforcement?
Yes.
And you were also told to measure that location as well?
Yes.
And where did the tire tracks that were marked lead to that location?
The same general location, yes.
And I want to take your attention to the bottom line across the page, at the bottom of the page, going from the left-hand side to the right-hand side of the page. Does that depict anything in particular or just the property line?
Just that was all fenced in. The whole area had been fenced in.
So wherever the outside border that we're looking at here, or is it just the rear and then the side?
Foundation.
He was on site looking at a fence, Your Honor.
All that.
Thank you.
Foundations from there.
So the line on the bottom, you said that was a fence?
Yes, yes,
The line on the right-hand side of the page, was that a fence?
yes.
And then were these lines fences or something else?
Those were fences also.
Okay. And you didn't mark any other tire tracks?
No.
And did you see any other tire tracks?
Yes.
What other tire tracks did you see on scene?
I saw just other indentations in the soft ground that they did not mark anything. They said it was from fire equipment.
They were not flagged.
They were not flagged, yes.
Yeah, sustained hearsay.
So you didn't mark any marks that were not flagged?
Correct.
I'm going to have you look at our next drawing. Look at the next drawing. And what are we looking at here?
The same drawing except blown up. It's in a larger scale of approximately 1 inch to 20 feet.
Better
And this
resolution.
has all your dimensions on it as well?
Yes, the measurements from the house out, yes.
And you said some of the drawings have different scales. Is that correct? Like 1 inch equaled so many feet?
Right, as the diagram gets blown up, so the scale is blown up also.
And are those marked then on the drawings?
They were on the original ones. I do not see them on these.
So when you blow it up, what would 1 inch equal then on the blown up drawings?
They were to equal 1 inch equals 20 feet.
I'm going to go ahead and advance to the third picture. And what are we looking at here?
It's the same scale drawing except blown up even more. And it has measurements on it.
So this one you did the actual measurements from the house to the victim?
Correct.
And that's where the flags were that you marked?
Yes.
That were marked. I'm going to go to the next drawing. And what are we looking at here?
Same increased scale of the house and a distance to where the flags were marked.
So the distance of the 19 feet 3 inches, is that the distance between the van and the house?
Let me just object, Your Honor. The van wasn't present when they did this.
I'll overrule that objection for overrule.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we're looking at 19 feet 3 inches.
Correct.
Were there any tire tracks that were flagged by the fence area?
No.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr.
Is he retired? Did he say he was retired? He just might have some cross here.
You look at that third picture that we were looking at, the enlarged one.
Yes.
See that? And it says victim. You see that?
Yes.
Todd Stermer was not laying there when you did the measurements, correct?
No, he was not.
Okay. So you don't know the orientation of Todd Stermer.
This is what he was described as.
That's all based on what officers told you, correct?
Correct.
All right. You would have no firsthand knowledge of any orientation of Todd Stermer, correct?
Correct.
And you would have no firsthand knowledge of the van orientation from your firsthand knowledge, fair?
Only from the flags and the tire marks.
Only from the secondhand testimony or statements from the police officers as to which direction the van was facing, right?
Correct.
All right. I do notice that if we were, you correct me if I'm wrong, if we were curious as to the path Linda Stermer took before Todd Stermer was ever impacted, your diagrams don't help us, do they?
I don't follow you.
You were given points of reference with respect to the final resting spot of Todd Stermer, correct?
Correct.
Your documents don't show, were you aware at all that Todd Stermer was earlier in a different place?
No.
And had been dragged by some neighbors
By the van.
to his final resting spot?
No.
So your drawings can't help us if we're curious about where was Todd Stermer initially, fair?
Fair. Correct.
Your Honor, that's a mischaracterization of testimony. He's testified that he went by the flags, and that's where the bodies were located from the flags.
He is testified.
Categorizing it as to talk about where the body had been moved. There were no flags where the body was moved.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, I'll overrule it.
Thank you. You marked where there were flags, correct?
Elio, thank you.
And there were no flags, to your knowledge, of anything else except Todd Stermer's final resting spot, correct?
Correct.
So we're curious about where Todd Stermer...
That's a miscategorization again. It's not Todd Stermer's final resting place. That's not what was flagged, and that's in from prior testimony and prior pictures that the place of the impact before the body was moved was flagged.
Is there an objection coming, Your Honor?
Yeah, I'll allow you to address it with the witness and redirect.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. As far as you know, this is the one and only spot where you were told Todd Stermer was, correct?
That's where it was marked.
And these tire tracks that we see don't show anything except from that point to the back, toward the back of the house. Am I right?
That's the way it was marked, yes, sir.
Okay. And so there's nothing on your drawings that would help us show the path of travel of Linda Stermer and her van before you see these tire tracks. Am I right?
It goes with the direction that the going down around the side of the house.
Before you were directed to this point where you first have the tire tracks, are we clear on this?
Yes.
Okay. You don't have anything up above that to the east, am I right?
No.
Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So you can't tell us or help our jury with any path that Linda Stermer traveled before this point here, am I right?
Correct.
Oh, by the way, you don't know what caused the fire, do you?
Objection, Your Honor.
Here's another guy.
Not my specialty, sorry.
Let's cross-examine just two questions. You don't know what caused the fire, fair?
Asked and answered. Objection.
We didn't get an answer.
You can get the answer, though. You can ask it once and then move on.
It's the third time.
Do I? No.
And you don't know where the fire started in the house, right?
No.
1 second.
He's going back to defense table to make sure he got everything, but
Did you meet law enforcement out there?
Yes.
And so you were directed to where to take measurements from?
Correct.
And you were then directed where the flags were placed?
Correct.
By the law enforcement that had attended and was out there?
Yes.
Do you recall who was out there with you?
Detective Lieutenant Stump. There was another officer out there. I don't remember his name, and then the fire marshal Scott Leroy was out there.
Thank you. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Mueller, any follow-up?
What day would this have been? Was this the 8th?
This was the 8th. I think I was out there a little after 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Thank you. Nothing else.
Okay.
Ms. Ayden, anything else?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Jury, any questions of him? No. May he be excused from his subpoena,
I would
Counsel?
ask that you please be excused, Your Honor.
Oh, I've got a question.
No?
Jury question. I'm not sure what it says on his shoulder patch. Weigh something? What is his...
Any objection, Counsel?
Yes.
You good with any of these?
I'm good with it.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You're all done.
Jury said never mind.
And I think I'll take that from you. Thank you. Ms. Siderbean, you may call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please call David Hayhurst to the stand, please.
Weighmaster.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat.
I think he's a fire investigator.
Give us your full name and spell your last name. And you're going to put that microphone right in front of your mouth.
Excuse me. My name is David Hayhurst. Last name is Hayhurst.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you, Your Honor.
He's happy to be here. He must be getting paid. The billable started. He just started grinning.
Mr. Hayhurst, what is your current occupation?
I'm currently employed by the Michigan Department of State Police, assigned to the Grand Rapids Forensic Laboratory in the Forensic Biology and DNA Unit. I'm also a member of our Grand Rapids Laboratory Crime Scene Response Team.
And how long have you been in that position?
I have been in this role for over 20 years now.
Salary.
So you were in that role in January 7th of 2007?
That is correct. I had just over 2 years at that point.
And are there specific areas of expertise in the crime laboratory?
There are a number of different disciplines in which we perform testing. I'm a member of a few of those disciplines at our local laboratory.
What ones are you a member of?
So most of my time is spent in the Forensic Biology and DNA Unit, more specifically as a DNA analyst. Although some small portion of my job duties is also occupied by my role in the Crime Scene Response Team from the Grand Rapids Laboratory, where we will respond to crime scenes and process for forensic evidence to bring back to the laboratory for testing.
And what type of training is required for this position?
For the role of forensic biology and DNA, we have an established training program. It's changed a little bit over the years, but by and large it remains the same. My training for the biology portion of that is about 6 months to 9 months, and that's where I'm learning the policies, procedures in place to learn what types of testing are available. In forensic biology, we're trying to determine what type of biological material is present. Is it blood? Is it seminal fluid? Is it saliva? So there's a series of tests that we can do, and the training is specific to that. For my current role in the DNA unit, it's about 1.5 years up to 2 years of training in order to perform all of the different DNA functions. And then for crime scenes specifically, that's changed a little bit over the years, but my training involved an intensive 40-hour course of crime scene, learning a lot of different crime scene disciplines for collecting, and then a lot of on-the-job observation as a member of crime scene teams that are responding to different teams. And then as I've taken on new roles and added new responsibilities over that time. There have been some additional tasks that I've incorporated into that, and additional training that goes with those tasks.
So how many crime scenes have you actually been out on and analyzed?
So best I can do is estimate. Let's say I go to about one a month. Typically they're larger scenes, but about one a month over that 20-year period, whatever that math works out to. Some years obviously more, some years less. It kind of depends on the nature of what's out and about there for us.
How many cases have you worked on where you were working with DNA and forensic biology?
Yeah, for forensic, first the screening portion, I would say less so today. Today I'm currently focused more on the DNA. As far as the screening, I might have done 3, 4, 5 cases a day throughout an entire year for the first 10 to 15 years of my career. So a number of different types of screening for the DNA analysis. Also kind of tough to give a good number there. We run cases in batches. Each batch might have 10 to 15 cases. I might run, let's say easy, one batch per month, maybe 2 batches per month, multiply by the number of cases. So fair to say in each of those instances, hundreds to if not thousands of different cases over that 20-year period.
Have you been qualified as an expert?
Yes, I have.
And in what areas?
I have testified in the state of Michigan and in federal courts in the areas of forensic biology, forensic DNA analysis, and crime scene processing.
And you said several state courts, or?
I've testified in Michigan state courts, various counties across the state. And then I've also testified in federal court, both the Eastern and Western District of Michigan, and actually got to go to Indiana once and testified in Northern Indiana. So.
Yay, Indiana.
And as part of your preparation for this, did you provide me with your curriculum vitae?
Yes, I did.
And the curriculum vitae outlines your education, your training, and your occupation and positions. Is that a fair statement?
That is correct. It's all of the various forms of additional training that I've added on after that initial training period.
Your Honor, I would move to admit Pickles Exhibit number 9 into evidence at this time.
We'll stipulate, Your Honor. We'll stipulate.
Court will receive Exhibit 9, the CV.
Thank you, Your Honor. People would also move to admit Mr. Hayhurst as an expert in forensic biology and, DNA identification and forensic biology.
We'll stipulate to that too.
Okay. Court will receive as an expert in forensic biology and DNA analysis.
In January of 2007, were you called to assist the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department with an investigation involving a Ford Ecoline van?
Yes, we were, and I was.
And were you present when it was searched on January 9th of 2007?
Yes, I was.
Do you recall where that search was done?
The van was being secured upon our arrival at a location that was identified as Decatur Towing. It was in the town of Decatur, in the area of Decatur, Michigan, and it was secured upon our arrival.
And what is your original procedure then once you arrived?
Yeah, so specific for the crime scene processing, we were requested to analyze or to process the vehicle, process the van, and note any specific forensic value to it. Specifically, there was a focus on potential for biology or for blood stains that might be present. But our process is going to be the same. We arrive on scene, and our initial steps are going to be a series of documentation. So documenting the current condition of the vehicle, that would involve note-taking, how many miles are on the vehicle, is there any noted damage, any observational type things. It will involve a series of photographs of the vehicle. So again, what's the current condition of the vehicle upon our arrival? And then after that initial documentation is completed, we'll kind of jump into the more discipline-specific aspects. So again, at that point is where we started looking a little more specifically for what potential biological evidence might be present on that vehicle.
So you've already alluded to it, but based on these original observations, were there any areas that you determined that could possibly be blood or DNA?
Yeah, so initially upon our arrival, the vehicle's on the ground in the garage, and even immediately across the front surfaces of the vehicle, there were visible red-brown stainings that looked characteristic of blood staining. And so that was kind of the first initial observation before we did anything. At that point, we actually took advantage of the garage that it was stored in had a vehicle lift, so we could put the vehicle up on the lift and hoist it so that we could get on the underside of the vehicle, where we again were looking to observe additional red-brown stains that were present on the underside of the vehicle.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 10. And there are 11 different photographs with little numbers at the bottom. If you could just flip through those and tell me if you recognize those photos, please.
Yes, People's Proposed Exhibit number 10 is a series of 10 photographs that appear to be photos that were taken during our processing of this vehicle. I can see some of the stickers that I applied during our processing and analysis. And these do appear to be fair and accurate photos of the vehicle upon the condition in which we were processing it.
Your Honor, our people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 10 at this time.
No objection.
We're in
Permission to
Michigan, by the
publish.
way.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Michigan.
So I'm going to show you, and these pictures have a number in the lower right-hand corner. So this one has a number 1, so I'll make sure you're looking at the same. Can you tell the jury what we're looking at here in picture number -1?
Yes, in People's Exhibit number 10, image number 1 is an image, and the coloring's a little tough here. This is kind of the advent of digital photography for us during processing. This is a view of the front surface of the vehicle itself. In the center of the image, there's a large white rectangle. That's a scale tag. It's a way for us to first of all put a scale in there. It's I believe a 1-inch scale, 2-inch segment here. Might be centimeters, excuse me. But it provides a scale that's present here. And then it also allows for the identification of this area. So handwritten in text on here is my handwritten text. I can see my initials are in the lower right of that. Excuse me. So the bottom line of that text is handwritten. It has our laboratory number. It has the date that we processed this vehicle. So January 9th of 07 has my initials. And then just above the laboratory number on the left-hand side is an indication of L-1. And that to me is an indication that this is the first area that we identified, again, on the front surface of that vehicle.
So you're starting at the front vehicle with your sample?
That is correct. That numbering system began at the front. It's actually, there's not a wider picture. It's more, a little bit more on the driver's side of the front of the van, and it's that lower front bumper. The bottom portion of it would almost be that kind of plastic fascia that hangs below the metal bumper itself. But it's a view of that front leading surface of the van on that front bumper.
And is this, at this time, the van is on the lift?
It's tough to say at this point whether it's on the lift or on the ground. If it's got tags, I wouldn't be able to say. Based on this photo, I wouldn't be able to say if it was yet on the ground and I'm stooped taking a picture, or whether it's up on the lift and I'm partially raised and I'm looking at it. I wouldn't be able to tell.
I'm going to advance then to the photograph of the number 2 at the bottom right corner. And can you tell the jury what we're looking at here?
Excuse me, yes. Image number 2 within People's Exhibit number 10 is a similar view. Again, the same tag is visible. It's a little different lighting condition of the bumper itself, but the same information on the tag, lab number, date, my initials, and identifies it as area L1. And again, the tag is above some of the visible staining that's present on the bumper itself.
And you said the staining then that you're looking at is below that tag?
Yeah, it's kind of a tough, again, the contrast in this photo, this is early digital photography for us. The red-brown staining is probably most prominently visible below the tag and slightly to the right. You can see there's a little bit of a red discoloration. Actually, it looks better on the monitor than the printout. Much better on the
pointing to
monitor,
the right
sorry.
location?
Yeah, that's correct. So there's some red-brown staining that's visible below the tag, slightly to the right. And in person, that staining actually is visible. It covers an area approximately 24 inches across the face of that bumper. It was heaviest in this area, but it does cover a little bit of a wider area.
It's like the biggest fish
across the front of the van. The front bumper of the van.
And I'm going to go then to photograph number 3.
Yeah, so photograph number 3, again, is a photograph of the underside of the vehicle at this point. So now the van is actually elevated, so it's easier for me to get underneath and see parts of it. What we actually see on the, again, you can see another one of my white tags. The color balance is a little tough on this one. Dark underside, bright white tag. It's a tough camera shot. But what we actually see in the photo on the right-hand side of the photo is the front driver's side tire. You can see the rounded portion. We catch just a little bit of it in the frame of the photo. The white sticker that I've placed is on, my car terminology is not real great. It's on the axle arm that will support that tire. And what we actually see is there's some red-brown staining on the leading edge of that arm that will support the tire itself. Again, driver's side, the front-facing portion is imaged here, and it has that red-brown staining that's present.
And I just want to be clear, the red-brown staining you are then discussing is then down and to the left of the sticker?
That is correct.
So
a lot of portions on the underside of this vehicle did show signs of rust, so it does kind of present a little bit of a challenge. But real specifically, the area you just identified, where you can see it's a little darker in its appearance, that would be the red-brown staining that we're looking at and we're focusing on here.
And I should have asked you sooner, when you have these white tags, is that signify then where you're taking samples from?
That is correct. So this tag actually would indicate that this is the area that we identified as LV2, and it's the second of the series of samples that we're going to collect from the underside of this vehicle.
And I'm going to advance now to photo number 4.
Yeah, photo number 4 is the next in the series of stains that we identified on the underside of this vehicle. Again, this is the leading face, or we're looking from front to back on the van, underside of the van. It's on the driver's side of the van, not the passenger side. And this is some kind of a protective box that's on the van. It's been welded to protect some feature of the automotive component. But what we see is in the corner of this box, just below the white tag, is an area, again, of red-brown staining that was an area of focus. Again, that box had kind of a sharp, pointy corner to it, and that would be an area that appears to have captured some red-brown staining. This tag in this instance identifies this area as LV3.
And that would mean then the third sample you took?
That is correct.
And when you said the little point below the sticker, I just want to make sure we're all looking at the same thing. Is my pointer on the correct photo or correct point there?
Yes, that's correct. Again, that corner both stained up, over, and back a little bit, but right on that leading edge corner of that protective box.
And I'm going to go to photo number 5, and could you explain to the jury what this is?
Photo number 5 is again another image of that same area. It's that same protective box. We have a slightly different lighting quality to this photo, so perhaps it's a little easier to visualize. Again, this represents area LV3, again the third stain that we've identified. And again, you can see that discoloration right on that corner of that protective box itself. Plenty of other rusty areas underneath the van, but we see there's a little bit of a change in the kind of the color, the intensity of that red that really piqued our interest. Instead of being rust elsewhere, this is the area of actual staining that we were focused on.
I'm going to advance then to photo number 6, and what are we looking at here?
Yeah, so photo number 6 is actually not too far. It's kind of adjacent to the box that we saw in the last photo. Photo number 6 is actually an image of the driver's side running board. The van had side step running boards, and this is actually an image from the underside looking towards the outside. So we're actually seeing the part that you wouldn't see if you're standing outside the van. You'd only see if you're standing below the van. And again, we see that there's this area of red-brown discoloration. This had a more like a silvery, almost like an aluminum type of an appearance. And so the red-brown staining is a little more visible in this. This is what we identified as area LV4. It would be the 4th area where we saw red-brown staining underneath the vehicle.
And you said this was also on the driver's side?
That is correct.
I'm going to advance now to photo number 7 in the bottom right corner. Can you explain what this is?
Yeah, again, this is very similar to the last view. Again, just a little bit of a tweak in the lighting or the imaging. You can see a slightly different appearance. Same LV4, same red-brown stain along the running board side of the vehicle. But again, we see this appearance of that staining that is present.
I'm going to advance now to photo number 8. Could you explain what this is?
Yeah, so photo number 8 is a little bit further back. Again, we're on the underside of the vehicle. We're on the driver's side still. This is again, here's my terminology, is not great. The rear axle of the vehicle. This is we see that there's a cylinder shape that runs across the photo left to right. That's the portion of the back axle that is going to then support that rear tire. We see that there are several U-bolts that are kind of holding that vehicle to that axle. And as you look on the U-bolt itself and then on the axle that's next to it, we see that there is red-brown staining. In this image, it would be to the right. Again, my number tag is here, present, LV5 in this instance. The staining is to the right of the tag and slightly below. And we see where it is on both the axle itself, so the wide cylinder portion that's going to support that, and then on the bolt that actually secures that axle to the underside of the vehicle. It's kind of a continuation of that red-brown staining on both of those surfaces.
So when you talk about the bolt, where is the bolt at?
Again, my terminology is not great. Those would be in the shape of a giant, each of those would be in the shape of a giant U that would support the axis. That's correct. So either side of my white tag is a big, like a U-shaped piece of metal that will then bolt that axle to the frame of the vehicle itself.
And you saw then some staining then on both sides of that?
Primarily on the right bolt, so primarily on the right side of the white number tag. But again, we see that it's on both that metal bolt and then on the axle itself, kind of a continuation across both of those surfaces.
And I'm going to advance now to number 9. And what are we looking at here?
Again, this would be that same area, stain we've identified as LV5. Again, slightly different lighting conditions here. But again, we see where there is red-brown staining. The whole underside itself kind of has that rusty, kind of dirty appearance to it. But we see an area that's slightly more red-brown in appearance, and that's more consistent with the red-brown staining of blood staining. And so that's the area we focused on, and I would have collected from this surface.
And I'm going to advance then to the last photo, I believe photo 10.
Yeah, image number 10 from People's Exhibit number 10 is an image of the spare tire on this van. So on this vehicle, the spare tire is actually located on the exterior of the vehicle. On the underside, it's kind of suspended from the bottom of the back of the vehicle. And what we observed is you can kind of see the tread of the tire is pretty apparent through the center of this photo. I have a tag on here that's identified this as stain LV6. And it's actually this grouping or collection of stains that you can see on the tread of the tire. Again, the bottom surface of the tire is visible on the bottom portion of the vehicle, so imagine that hanging off the bottom side. And then you have tread that carries up vertically up into some of the protected recesses underneath that vehicle. And we actually see is there's red-brown staining towards the top of that tire tread, so nearest to the underside of the vehicle, further away from the ground itself. We see that staining continues up that vertical surface. And that portion that was collected from this LV6 is a portion of the red-brown staining that was visible on that tire itself.
She claims this part was an accident.
Still looking at just the driver's side.
Yeah, again, the tire is, because it's larger, it has a little bit more central location, but this surface that it's on, this portion of the tire, is more to the driver's side than it is to the passenger side. Again, consistent with the staining that we've seen from the front of the vehicle as it continues through the bottom side of the vehicle along the driver's half of the vehicle, and then this would be the end of that visible staining that's present.
So tell me if my question is confusing. If I were standing in the back of the van and looking towards the front of the van, were there any stains going that direction?
So it may be possible to visualize a small portion of these stains if you are standing in the back of the van and looking forward, but just the portions that kind of continue from the front-facing surfaces downward. by and large, most of the stains that were visualized were much more visible on the front-facing vertical surfaces of the van. Again, surfaces that I would expect to see if you were standing in the front looking back at different surfaces on the underside as compared to the reverse of standing behind and seeing them forward. Everything appeared to be on the front-facing surfaces,
so
not
she only
on
hit
the
him once.
rear-facing surfaces.
I thought she said she backed over him and then ran over him again.
It's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 11, and it sounds like we have a stipulation from defense to the admission at this time. Stipulate?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. We'll receive People's 11.
Yes, Your Honor. And I'm going to put it up on the screen for everyone to see. And is this your report?
That is correct. This is the laboratory report that our team generated in response to our crime scene response. It's a 3-page report, and it is a fair and accurate copy of our report.
And could you just give just kind of a general overview of what we're looking at in this report?
Yeah, so all of our reports begin with this kind of top header type information. Has our laboratory information at the very top, has some case-specific information. It will bear in the upper left-hand corner, it has our laboratory number, so all of our laboratory work under this incident will have the same laboratory number. And it has the submitting agency and their complaint number, so Van Buren County Sheriff's Department, and what complaint number they're carrying this under. And then beyond that, we detail some of the real basic portions of the report, our kind of background in our crime scene response specific to this activity. So it begins with a basic information that is basically a retelling of how did we receive the request to come and respond. So it was actually received on the 8th of January, and we responded on the 9th of January. The response itself is detailed here, so this will list our personnel that were involved in going to the scene, where we actually arrived at, and when we responded. And then the next section begins at the bottom of the first page, and we'll carry on beyond that, is some of the details of the vehicle itself. So again, this is some of that initial documentation type information that we've collected specific to the van. It's a 1993 Ford Econoline Mark III van, has this license plate, this VIN number, some basic descriptions of the van itself, and then we go into some of the actual observations that were made specific to the red brown staining that is present here.
So if I go to page 2, we see that?
That continues under the top of page 2, again, kind of detailing some of these areas of red brown staining that we've already characterized from the photos, kind of describes them in a little bit more detail. In the middle of page 2 is a chart, and we always include this chart for any evidence that we've collected from any crime scene response we go to. So specific to this case, this chart lists the 6 items, LV1 through LV6, that were collected from this vehicle. It gives a brief description of where they were discovered from. In this case, they're all red-brown stains from the bottom side of this vehicle, front or the bottom side of this vehicle. Has what date, time it was collected, who it was collected by, and who took it back to the laboratory to submit it for analysis. And in this instance, all of those were collected by myself and then taken back to the lab for further processing by myself. Then there's a couple of more specific notes about the documentation itself, just saying that I myself took some measurements of some of the different portions of the stains and their locations. One of my coworkers, another one of our responding members, took some photographs, so he would have taken the photographs that we've seen today. And then finally, a third member did some real basic sketches of the underside of the vehicle. And then the final page has the 3 signatures of there were 4 of us on the team that day. One was an analyst in training. So the 3 responsible parties who were there to make observations on that day are listed here. Kevin Streeter, Troy Ernst, and myself, David Hayers.
And I'm going to show you now what's been marked with People's Proposed Exhibit number 12.
Stipulate. talking amongst themselves. Let's give them a moment.
So I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 12 and number 13, if you could look at those.
People's Proposed Exhibits number 12 and 13 excuse me, are two additional laboratory reports that I generated based on laboratory testing or processing that was done, again, back at our laboratory specific to this case.
So those are your reports, no changes or alterations?
That is correct. They are fair and accurate copies.
Your Honor, I'd move to admit People's Exhibits 12 and 13 into evidence.
Any objection? Okay, court will receive People's 12 and 13.
Permission to publish. So I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 12. If you could just tell the jury what we're looking at here.
So again, this is a laboratory report that I generated specific to the same incident, same laboratory number. In this report, I am doing that initial biology testing in the laboratory or biology processing for those 6 samples that I collected from the vehicle itself. So you'll see that each of the 6 items is listed here as being an item of evidence that was received. Some of the items actually had some testing that I did in the laboratory. Items 1, 3, 5, and 6 are items that I did a little further testing in the laboratory. Items 2 and 4, I did not do any further testing at this time. They didn't end up being forwarded to DNA analysis because I selected other items instead. But it lists each of those items, LV1 through LV6. Specific to LV1, 3, 5, and 6, I performed the same test in the laboratory on each of these items, and in each of these instances, I had the same result. Bless you.
Bless you.
An immunological test that I have available to me, it's a specific test for a protein that is present in human blood, is a test that I conducted, and in each of these 4 items, it was positive. It indicated the presence of human blood on item LV1, LV3, LV5, and LV6. So those 4 items, I cut a portion of the swab that I collected and I prepared it in a DNA extraction tube so that it would be ready to go for the next step of DNA analysis testing. So that's the report. Basically, again, lists those 6 items, lists that test results, and then lists that I selected these 4 items to send forward for DNA analysis.
So the specific test result that you did is to determine that is human blood.
That's correct. On scene, I did a little early test to see if it was possibly blood or not on one of the 6 samples. Here, I wanted to follow up with a little stronger test. It's much more specific to human blood and not other types of blood or other other things that can give us different results. So I wanted a little more specific test. And in each of these 4 instances, it did indicate that it was human blood.
So at this point, there's no DNA testing. It's just the presence of the human blood?
That's correct.
And then you said that you prepared it then for further testing?
That's correct. In each one of those samples, I collected it. Originally on the scene, I collected the swab onto 2 cotton tip swabs. We wet them, I'll swab the blood, and it carries over to the swabs. In the laboratory here, I would have cut the cotton portion off of one of those swabs and placed it into a DNA extraction tube. And that's helpful for the DNA analyst because then everything's ready to go. They can just add their chemicals and go through their process. So I did that initial testing to see that it was human blood and then prepared it for that DNA analysis process.
And now I'm going to show you then People's Exhibit 13. And what are we looking at here?
People's Exhibit number 13 is another report that I generated on this same case. It actually, the work was done on the same day. It was just done later in the day. For People's Exhibit number 13, this is where I processed a DNA card was submitted from Todd Stermer. A DNA card is a card that's collected at autopsy. They will take blood at autopsy and they will spot it out onto a card so that blood is dried. And then I'll take a cutting or a portion of that and place it into a tube so that it's ready to go for DNA analysis. This is what's used as a known sample for this case. So the previous report I sent 4 evidence samples forward, and now I have 1 known sample that will be used as a known profile from this individual and will be used to compare against the evidence samples that were submitted.
And so then you prepared those samples then with the known sample and then the unknown samples from the van, and then those particular samples go then for DNA analysis?
That's correct. They were prepared separately, so 4 evidence samples and then the 1 known. But all of those samples were then forwarded for DNA analysis. Each one's in its own separate tube, each one's sealed separately, and they're ready to be tested by our DNA analyst in this case.
And do you know who the DNA analyst that you forward these to was?
Yes, in this case, the analyst is Ann Hunt, who was a coworker of mine for many years, and she's the one who conducted the testing on this case. Pretty sure I was pretty close to being done with my DNA training at this point, but might not have been quite signed off yet. So these were handed over to an additional analyst for testing.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Cross-exam, maybe a quick witness.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Let me just make sure I understand some of what you did. Some of the photographs you showed a tire and some blood stains on the tire.
That's correct.
Red-brown stains on the tire, right?
That's correct, yes.
I just want to make sure we're clear. Those were on the spare tire underneath the van.
That is correct. The images that were shown here today with the red-brown staining on the tire, that is the spare tire, again, located on the undersurface of the vehicle, kind of suspended from the bottom side of the vehicle, and they were on that vertical edge, the tread portion of that tire.
Okay. There was nothing from the tread portion of the 4 tires, driver front, passenger front, driver rear, passenger rear, on the tread surface themselves, correct?
There was brown staining on the treads of all 4 tires, but it was brown like a mud brown. It was not a brown that would make me have cause to think that it could be red brown that would be more consistent with blood staining. It was much more like a muddy type of appearance.
Which, of course, you saw mud on the frame and mud on the tires, right?
That's correct.
All right. I noticed that, I want to make sure we are clear about this too. Your report indicates on page 2
of the scene report.
Of the scene report, right?
Yes.
Are you with me? Do you have
I don't have it in front of me, but it's the 3-page People's 11.
Have you reviewed it? Your report
I have
before you
reviewed
came
it.
here? All right, I just want to make sure I'm clear. No red-brown stains were noticed on any rearward-facing edges of any objects under undercarriage.
That's correct. Again, the staining that was visualized was more on the front-facing surfaces of the underside, not the rear-facing surfaces.
Which would suggest that when the source of the red-brown stains was struck, the van was going forward.
That would be the suggestion. Again, that would be one possible explanation, is as something is traveling under the van and depositing those stains, it would be traveling and hitting the front-facing surfaces, not the rear-facing surfaces. Again, I wouldn't go much beyond that, but it would be consistent with that appearance.
It's certainly most likely would be consistent with that.
That's correct, yes.
All right. There's nothing that suggested to you that the van was put in reverse and backed up over the source of those red-brown stains, fair?
That's correct. I have no indications of that.
Now, I notice on page 2 that you used a tape measure.
That is correct.
None of your photographs show anything in terms of dimensions of how far inboard these stains were.
That is correct.
Or, frankly, how high the stain was on that lower fascia, right?
So there is some notation in my notes that are not represented in the report, and that would be where I was using the tape measure to, again, measure size of those stains and distribution. I do have notation of that front-leading blood staining, if you'd like those measurements.
I just want to make sure we're clear. All the measurements were from the front fascia and below.
So the measurements that I have for that LV1, which is that front-facing stain, showed that the staining was approximately 24 inches wide at its widest and would go from the lower portion of that fascia, so the fascia would be up off the ground a bit, and continued approximately, I believe it's 5 inches upward from there. So
from the
however
underside.
high that is off the ground, that stain would be approximately 24 wide by approximately 5 inches high on the front surface of the vehicle.
Got it. Which would suggest that the source of the red-brown stain was lying prone on the ground when that source was struck.
We're speculating here. He's just talking about the measurements. That
He took measurements and found the blood,
I think-
or what he thinks is blood.
Maybe establish if this is even in his area of expertise.
Oh, I'm just going to get right to there right now. You are a chemist, am I right?
I would characterize myself more as a biologist, but yes,
I don't want to insult you, sir. All right. As a biologist, you are certainly not an accident reconstructionist, right?
That is correct.
You have no specialty in biomechanics.
That is correct.
You have no specialty in injury causation.
I've had some training, but I would not characterize myself as a specialist in this.
And you certainly wouldn't offer an opinion as to injury causation in this case. Fair?
That's correct, yes, that's
right. You are apparently not an expert in any type of body kinematics?
That's correct.
You, in terms of any injury causation forces that on impact, you would defer to somebody who was a biomechanics expert or an accident reconstruction person for those, right?
That is correct, yes.
Are you aware, sir, that the medical examiner in this case said the van impact had nothing to do with Todd Stermer's death?
I was
That's not in evidence, is it?
It is. Dr. Markey just
He
testified.
only testified what could be consistent. He didn't say, and then he said his cause of death was from the inhalation of the fire, but the injuries were then consistent with being hit by a van. So I think we're
The
miscalculating.
question, Your Honor,
Rephrase the question.
was you are not aware that the medical examiner said that the impact with the van had nothing to do with the injuries that caused Mr. Stermer's death.
Again, Your Honor,
I'm
I just
going to
think
sustain that objection. I think it's a bit confusing.
You don't know the cause of this fire, do you?
I do not have any information related.
No information on where the fire started, am I right?
I do not have any information related to that.
No further questions.
Nothing more at this time. Thank you.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
Jury, do you have questions of him? I definitely have hands going up.
Yep. Wow. All right, we do have both the verdict and the closing arguments from the baseball bat trial we were following yesterday that are available over on the Top Mark Media channel. We do ask if you do go over there and watch them, which a couple hundred of you have. Please don't share the results here. I have not watched them. Yes, I uploaded them. I have not watched them. I don't know what happened, and I'd like to watch it in real time at some point. So appreciate you guys obliging us and not spoiling it. Let's see what these questions are. More questions incoming. There's, I believe, her daughter. Is that correct? I think that's her. Thank you, Myron.
Questions from the jury, no objection from counsel.
Here we go.
Did you test anything inside the driver's area for fluid or blood?
No, we did some basic observation on the interior of the vehicle, but there were no stains of interest, no areas that piqued our interest, so no additional testing was conducted inside the vehicle itself.
Is it ever positive, is it ever possible, I'm getting better at this juror's handwriting, but is it ever possible where false positives occur in testing?
Yeah, certainly when we talk about the biological screening testing that is available to me, we have a number of different tests that are available. Some of them are potentially have more false positives than others. That's part of our training, is to learn to identify some of those scenarios. For example, the underside of a vehicle frequently has a lot of rust. And rust is known to cause issues with some of the testing that we do. So specific to this vehicle, I chose not to do that test on the rusty areas because of that. When we come in terms of the laboratory tests, or the test that I did in the laboratory, the immunological test, really the only known false positives there are known to be blood from, it'll react positive with blood from humans. It'll react positive with blood from upper primates, so orangutans, gorillas that might be running loose. And then finally, ferret blood. For whatever reason, that protein that's present in ferret blood can also give a false positive. That's why we kind of take those tests with a grain of salt and understand that the DNA analysis portion is really ultimately the best test that I have, and that will be truly a good gauge as to whether that's a human blood stain or not if we get a good DNA profile from that sample.
Thank you.
Gorillas that might be running loose.
I think you answered this pretty much. Was the inside of the van checked for any blood or fluid?
Yeah, again, we did a very precursory look. We did examine the interior of the van. There were no stains of interest that required us to look a whole lot further, so no additional testing on the inside of the van.
Thank you. Council, any questions in light of the questions and answers? Other than where might be the orangutans that are on the loose?
So when you say you checked and there were no stains or areas of interest in the inside, did you also look at the steering wheel?
Yeah, again, we looked at kind of the standard components of steering wheel, seats, flooring, all of the kind of immediate areas you would be in, definitely in the vicinity of whoever may have been driving that vehicle, but also through the middle and the rear portions of the vehicle, there was other kind of normal standard stuff that you have in your car. We observed kind of that stuff to make sure there was nothing that was any large glaring stains that were present. And again, no observations were made within of any red brown staining within the interior of the vehicle.
And how about door handles, both interior and exterior?
Door handles we would have examined too as a part of that process and didn't observe any stain that was present.
I have no further questions, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Mueller?
Thank you. Just a few questions.
Tabitha, welcome to the gallery.
You are trained to have a keen eye looking for these red-brown stains that might be blood.
That is right.
All right. So in your examination of the driver's side interior of the van, you didn't just stick your head in, I don't see anything, and leave.
That's
right?
correct. That's correct.
I don't mean to be facetious, but you're a scientist.
That's correct.
All right. So you didn't find anything on the driver's side inside, am I right?
That is correct.
You didn't find anything that piqued your interest on the passenger side.
On the interior of the vehicle, no, that's correct.
You didn't find anything in the rear on all that stuff.
That's
that
correct.
Piqued your interest, and had anything piqued your interest, you would have taken a sample.
I would have at least followed up with some kind of testing at the scene and potentially collect a sample, and I did not in this case.
Thank you.
Ms. Ayden?
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, do you have any other questions? No questions. May he be excused from subpoena, counsel?
I would ask that
He's done.
Agreed, Mr. Mueller?
I'm good.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You're all
Thank you.
done.
I'm good, he says.
Sir, do
I'm
you
good.
mind handing me those exhibits? Thank you. Okay, we'll take our afternoon break at this time, jury. About 15 minutes again. Remember the rules.
Remember the rules. Just remember them. We're not going to cover them. Just recall amongst yourself. Quick little break here. Selena K says the trauma surgeon could not repair my knee, so now I'm facing a total knee replacement as of today. Oh, my goodness. Well, we know what it is now. And the good news is you'll have all the newest parts instead of have some old parts and some new parts. So, might be an easier surgery. Your mission to become part cyborg is well underway at this point.
I have two lab personnel downstairs that I'd really like to try to get done today. So we got Ann Hunt, who is going to do the DNA analysis testifying, and then we have Troy Ernst. And so those would be the last two witnesses for the day. So
Those
I just
are the
wanted
two
them
people
for
on the
report of
report.
where we were at.
Okay, I think I have a hearing at 4:45. We have a 4:30 hearing.
In Troy Burns.
We have a 4:30 hearing, but we're going to tell them 4:45, so hopefully we can.
We should wrap those two.
Yeah, I think that's a realistic goal, depending on defense. So I just learned through the court that I was just going to try to get those two people in, and if we can do that, then everybody else I can shift and move, so we'll be on track.
Okay. Efficiency is the key
Yes,
to
Your Honor.
success. Thank you.
All right, so they're going to go do their thing for a little break. Denalis, I think she corrected it. I'm going to give her some space if she corrected it immediately after, before she was done with the sentence. Tabitha, thank you. It's wonderful to have you as a member. Love seeing you in the green. You have a blue courthouse by your name as well. It was awesome. Yeah, we'll give her some space if it was just a slip of the tongue and then it came back. It's when they use it and think they were right that we're gonna add them to our list. All right, do you guys want everything we watched from yesterday's baseball bat trial loaded to top mark as well, so you can go over that? That had some of the spiciest stuff, like where the judge was yelling. He's like, "Hey, you listen to me." That part. Do you want that loaded as well? Because that'd be good. Stephanie says, totally off topic, RA, I'm buying my hubby a MindLab Xterra Pro metal detector for an anniversary gift. Do you have any opinion on this one? The MindLab Xterra Pro, I've not used that one. I've used MindLab, and it's my favorite detector is a MindLab. Let's see. The detector I use is a precursor, but a more advanced model than the Xterra Pro. Let's see. Good things about it. It's waterproof. It's rechargeable. I think it's multi-frequency, which helps a ton. Let me check. Let me check if it's multi-frequency. Fully waterproof. Might not be multi-frequency. It's what this metal detector, Stephanie. First of all, yes, I love metal detecting. That's why I'm answering this question. It's one of my hobbies. This metal detector is very similar to the Nokta Macro Simplex, the Simplex Plus, which I do have. It's also waterproof, very similar. Has a little vibration in the handle, so you can, which is great for when you're like underwater, literally underwater diving, because sound doesn't carry very well unless your ears are underwater too. And so it's great for stuff like that. I think it's a great detector. It's a quality machine, and MindLab's a great company, so I think you'll love it. Although there's a learning curve on these, and you've got to be patient through that learning curve. If you have somebody nearby that can walk you through testing the equipment, testing it out, and learning how the detector talks to you, because it does, it makes it a lot easier. But man, I'm struggling with the name here. Academic, but that's as close as I got. That's my Russian. I think this is Russian. Thank you very much for the super chat. I appreciate it. Somebody Exemic Borgri. Somebody spell this out for me. How do I pronounce that one? I apologize. All right. He is patient. He'll love it. Wonderful. Where's he going to go? Detect? Is he like a parks type area, beaches, old farms? Nailed it, says Jinjo. I've been practicing with pronunciation. What can I say? Let's see. Scott's member for 10 months. Welcome to the gallery. Says, just a poor country boy, actually here since Letitia Stout, RA, in this generous chat. Rock. Scott, thank you. Thank you very much. Good having you here. All right, on this particular case, I'm liking this case. I'm liking I think the state needs to bring in a couple more experts. I thought they need to get that testimony in about the testing of the towels to show there was gasoline in the towels she was washing. Not kerosene, not fuel oil, not heating oil, but gasoline. I think that's very, very important to the state's case. Hopefully they can bring that in through another expert, because if the defense just won that point outright, that's a huge one for defense. But not sure. I don't think either of the two that are coming in today are going to testify about that. So, but tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about this case and answering some of your questions with Josh Ritter on Courtroom Confidential. He's invited us on for a little Wednesday night chat. So, half an hour or so talking about this case, giving some updates, our thoughts on it, his thoughts. So please join us over there. If you haven't subscribed to Courtroom Confidential, what are you waiting for? That's an amazing channel. They're amazing over there. Love hanging out with Josh. He's really good. Can't wait to do some more stuff with him. We are on a little break right now, Crunchy Frog. We'll be back shortly. Right now we're just looking at the wall. So, made up word counter is up to 19. Here's our updates for those who missed earlier. The words I have are gentlemen's, as in ladies and gentlemen's, nucleus, privity, scratching, scintilica, ambulance, geographics, echoline, use, as in Y-O-U-S-E. I take some heat from this one. Guesstimation, antihistamine, urine, chromatology, pacifically, impinging, flammable, simplicit, excavate, and corroborate. Those are our made-up words for this trial so far. So once this is all done, I think we need to make a crosswords puzzle where all those words cross with each other, and then like a New York Times daily crossword with made-up words. Guesstimate is commonly used. I know I'm taking some heat from that one. I'm sticking with just because we created the word and a lot of people use it doesn't mean it's a thing. Although that's pretty much how all words began, right? Case timeline. Thank you for Josh for this. Linda Stermer was arrested and charged on June 5th, 2009 for the January 7th, 2007 death of Todd Stermer. So yes, 2 years later she was charged. She was found guilty in 2010. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Her conviction was overturned in December of 2018 after she'd served over 8 years of her sentence, because there was ineffective assistance of counsel and prosecutorial misconduct. The prosecutors called her a liar in the closing. They said she's a lying liar who lies. And between that and the fact that her lawyer didn't object to any of that or call his own fire investigation expert to counter the claims of the state, they went ahead and said, okay, we're going to let you get a new trial. A judge overturned her conviction. Then the appellate court upheld the overturning, and that's when she was released, and she's been out on bond since then. So yes, she's been out on bond a long time, 2018 to, 2025, with the state getting ready to recharge her again. Future, thanks for the kind words about Courtroom Confidential. We love that community over there. They're amazing. Josh works in the field. He is a professional and has some great insight, great delivery, fun guy to talk to. He and his wife are great, and he's got some of the best help he can possibly buy in the industry. Let's see. Defendant's statement had lots of made-up words. Prosecutor said, liar, liar. She set his pants on fire. That's pretty much what they said, yes. Imagine spending 7 years out knowing you're probably going back for life. That's got to be rough. Why was she out on bond for so long? The state was preparing to retry her. Nomi, I didn't say impinging was on the list. I said impinging. I-N. Impinging. Because impinging is definitely a word. Is the made-up words a thing from a youper? What? I don't know what a youper is. Tasha, teach me. Write it out in crayon so I will understand. Tony, happy birthday. Tony's a great support to the channel. He helps me a ton. Just little tiny things that matter a lot on the YouTube side of things. Just reminded me of things like when we're live streaming for a long time and we're reaching the point where if we go over 6 hours, for instance, I lose the ability to edit and make any changes to the live stream after it's done. And love it, Tony. I love that you're there and just watching my back for things like that. Thank you very much. I appreciate you, my friend. Have a happy birthday. Genjo. Okay, I realize I'm tracking words that other people say wrong and that I say many words wrong myself, but I don't count. It's one of those rank has its privileges. I'm the host. Lure. There's lure. See, I can say it the other way, but it looks funny. A Youper is somebody who lives in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Okay, Angelique, there we go. So it's a local, we're basically tracking the localized dialect. Made up words are everywhere. I am not a Youper. Okay, I want to say your name right, and I have no idea how to do it. Academic. I don't know. I don't even know how to do it. I'm playing the host card. Yes, I am. Joanna says, excuse me for being so far behind on this. Why is this trial being retried? Well, basically because there was prosecutorial misconduct. That means the prosecutor did something they should not have done in the trial, and it had an effect on the trial. In this case, the prosecutor told the jury that she was a liar who lied, and they shouldn't believe her. But they should believe their own witnesses, which is bolstering. And they also may have misrepresented some evidence in the closing statements. Now, closing statements are not evidence, right? So some judges might say, and as a matter of fact, the dissenting judge on this one, which I think we need to read the rest of the dissenting opinion. We haven't done that. Was basically mocking this. It's like, there's no reason for mistrial here. There's no reason. She is guilty as sin. But two of the judges agreed that she got a mistrial. Also, her lawyer was bad. He didn't object when he should have, and he didn't hire his own expert to look into the fire cause as to counter what the state had said. And those are those reasons all combined together means she gets a new trial. I fear she will not be found guilty because the state waited so long. Ohio Palm, I'm probably going to go into that more tomorrow when I'm talking with Josh, but there is a big issue with that. These long trials where we wait forever, and I'm not just talking about statute of limitations, which I don't think applies here when murder's involved, but the lengthy period of time, these cold cases that take forever to come around, there are challenges. There are challenges with people's memory. There are challenges with evidence, with the preservation of evidence. There's a lot of issues. So, let's see, Bolshevik Muppet. I don't know why it took so long to retry this one. It's not like they really came up with a whole bunch of new evidence. So Maybe it was just the decision of whether or not they were going to try it or not, and they finally said, yeah, let's give it a try. Does the prosecutor from the first trial get sanctioned if they're found guilty of misconduct? Unless it was like egregious and blatant and willful, and probably not. It's enough to have a conviction that you obtained through a trial overturned. That's enough of a smack in the face. Can the state talk about the red rags at all? I don't know, Deb. I hope they get to come in. I think that's really important. FYI, our generous super chat giver is Bonnie from Canada. Oh, she's making fun of... Hang on. This is Bonnie from Canada? Well, that explains the Canadian on the super chat. Bonnie, are you just torturing me with your name? What is this? What is this? Thank you, Bonnie. Yeah, how could you not read that? Apparently, on my side, it just looks different. Okay, where were we? We've got 2 more videos to upload on the top, Mark. I'll upload those other videos. Dog Lover, it's a fun day. I will say that anywhere you go on the internet, don't believe anything you see. If you're on Facebook, pretty much every story out there is fake. Today, it is April 1st. I did my own version of an April Fool's joke early this morning. So if you missed that, you might want to go back and watch the very, very beginning of our first stream this morning. It was a lot of fun. I don't know, maybe it's a precursor to something else. Judge is back. Let's give her a minute to use a tissue. We don't need to zoom in for this. We don't need to... She has to push the button on her desk to turn on the mics. She's not done it yet. Misconduct says, I've made it in life now. I'm a pink addict. 24 months. Misconduct and OG. I love the 3 years I've been here and the 2 years I've been a member. So much support. If you know, you know. Thank you very much, Misconduct. Thank you. Congratulations. One of our OGs. The appeals court ordered a retrial in 2020. So it was overturned in 2018, 2 years later, 2020, but still 5 years on a case where they're not gathering more evidence. That seems like a long time to wait on a case. Did the jail lady testify today? She did not.
Ms. Siderbean, you may call your next witness.
Call Ann Hunt to the stand.
Ann Hunt's coming in. Well, Ann comes in. Let me tell you, the lady who, she was actually the person who called 911 on the scene first. She skipped her subpoena. She got held in jail, tested for meth positive, apparently.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the
She's going to be in a hotel tonight, probably testify tomorrow.
Will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. And once you are settled in, I'll have you tell us your full name and spell the last, please. And you can move the microphone right near your mouth so the jury can hear you. Thank you.
My name is Ann Hunt, H-U-N-T.
Ms. Siderbean.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Hunt, what's your current occupation?
I am a retired forensic scientist from the Michigan State Police Forensic Laboratory.
And how long were you with the Michigan State Police?
I began my career with the Michigan State Police in 1987, and I retired in 2021.
So you were with them that entire time?
I was.
And what was did you have different positions or just the one position?
Initially, I was a serologist, which I was a forensic scientist that analyzed blood and other body fluids. And in 1999, we began DNA analysis at the Grand Rapids Laboratory, and I performed DNA analysis for the remainder of my career.
And you said, so your duties and responsibilities then were for the testing of DNA?
Most of them. I did continue to do serology testing throughout my career as well.
So what would you say are your specific areas of expertise?
I've been qualified as an expert in the fields of serology and DNA analysis.
And what is your formal education?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Michigan Technological University in Houghton, Michigan. I worked as a medical technologist in a hospital laboratory for 4 years, and then I became employed with the Michigan State Police, where I've completed internship, continuing education, and other training through the Michigan State Police and external agencies.
Can you give the jury an idea of how many cases you've worked on for DNA analysis?
When I retired, I had worked over 10,000 cases. Those were both serology and DNA. In the field of DNA alone, I would estimate I worked probably 4,000 cases with tens of thousands of samples involved in those cases.
And have you testified as an expert in court before?
Yes, I have.
How many different counties have you been in testifying?
We cover the whole west side of the state of Michigan and the Upper Peninsula. I've testified in, I would say, 25 counties throughout the state of Michigan. I've also testified in Indiana in federal cases as well.
And in those cases that you testified, you were then admitted as an expert?
I have been, yes.
And as part of your preparation for today, did you give me your current curriculum vitae?
I did.
And this has all your training, education, and experience on it?
That's correct.
I'm going to, Your Honor, may I approach? I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Exhibit number 14. Do you recognize that?
I believe I gave you a corrected version because I have till the present and I'm not working anymore from 2021.
I told the boss I quit. Is that what she just said? Told the president I'm not working anymore. She is not licking her fingers because she's a DNA expert.
I'm going to show you the corrected CV with a different front page. Do you recognize that?
Yes, I do. People's Exhibit 14 is a copy of my curriculum vitae, which lists my work experience, registrations in societies, my education, and it compiles the list of training and continuing education I participated in throughout my career.
Your Honor, the people would move to admit People's Exhibit 14 into evidence at this time.
Any objection? Court will receive Exhibit 14.
And we'd also move to admit Ms. Hunt as an expert in serology and DNA analysis.
No objection.
We'll receive her testimony as an expert in those areas.
I'm going to start with just kind of the basics of when you receive a sample for analysis. Can you walk the jury through kind of what you first do when you receive it?
Usually if it's for serology, an agency will bring in samples that they want analyzed for DNA. Those are logged into the front office desk with a specific laboratory number assigned to that complaint number from the agency. That lab number follows through for the entirety of the case. The evidence is placed in a cold storage vault until which time it is analyzed for serology. If samples are prepared for DNA analysis, those samples are placed in frozen storage until which time a DNA analyst would remove those samples from frozen storage to begin the DNA procedure.
And I think you've alluded to it a little bit, but what steps are taken to ensure the integrity of that evidence?
The integrity of the evidence, first it's brought into the laboratory in a sealed condition so that it would be evident if anything was tampered with. Then it is placed in cold storage to preserve the evidence. As far as during the actual analysis, we take steps to ensure that there's no contamination of any of the samples. We would wear gloves, gowns, masks, clean our tools in between each sample, clean the bench tops between each sample, so that all the evidence is preserved in its condition. The evidence is only taken out one item at a time and processed, and the knowns are never processed before any evidentiary samples, so as not to cross-contaminate a known sample with an evidence sample.
What are population frequencies?
Population frequencies are estimates of the frequency of how common a type. In the field of DNA, we call them alleles, how common those types would be in the population.
So is it how common that particular sample type would be?
It's since alleles or the types are genetically inherited, we have population databases that would give the frequency of how often those types are seen in the population. And when we are performing DNA analysis and giving a statistical estimate relating to those populations, we can do a calculation to see how common the profile of a whole would be in the population.
And then how are those estimates calculated?
There's mathematical calculations for the population frequencies and the overall frequency. We actually would have a database with the frequencies of those alleles that we put into a computer program to calculate it for us.
And can you explain then what type of testing is done on a DNA sample? Then for what type of testing do you do for your results?
Related to DNA?
Yes.
DNA is a procedure where we are looking at different areas of the DNA molecule that show high variability in the population. With the exception of identical twins, everybody's DNA is different. And most of a human's DNA, approximately 99.5% of their DNA is all similar in humans, but there is that variability of about 0.5% of the DNA that shows that variability. So we target those areas to look at on the DNA molecules so that we can determine if an individual could or could not have contributed to a particular evidence sample.
And at some point, did you receive evidence relating to Mr. Todd Stermer's DNA?
I did.
And what type of evidence did you receive?
I received a cutting identified as Todd Stermer. It was a cutting of a blood stain in an extraction tube that I performed DNA analysis on.
And did you receive any other samples to use as a comparison?
The known from Todd Stermer was used as a comparison to 4 evidentiary samples that I developed DNA profiles from.
So you had 4 unknowns and then you had the 1 known?
That's correct.
And what type of testing then did you perform on those unknown samples and the known sample?
I performed DNA testing. We perform what's called short tandem repeat testing, which is, as I described, there's regions that are variable in the population. And at that time, we were looking at 13 different areas of the DNA molecule that showed that variation. I performed testing on those evidentiary samples, and then I also performed testing subsequently on the known sample of Todd Stermer and did a comparison of the evidentiary samples to the known sample of Todd Stermer and based my conclusions on those results.
And as part of your testing, did you provide the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department with your laboratory report with your findings?
I did.
Your Honor, may I approach? I'm going to show you People's proposed exhibit number 15. Do you recognize this?
She is old school DNA, so it's not going to be world pop. It's going to be numbers, I think. We're going to have like septillions and gajillions and quadruple trillions or
People's
something.
proposed exhibit 15 is a copy of my laboratory report, which I prepared. It lists the laboratory number assigned to the case and the agency information. It also lists the evidence and the known sample that I received.
I'm going to stop you there. Has that been altered or changed in any way since you reviewed it?
No.
Your Honor, people would move to admit People's exhibit number 15 into evidence at this time.
No objection.
Court will receive 15.
Permission to publish, Your Honor?
You may.
So I'm going to put up now page 1 of your lab report, and I'm going to have you just describe to the jury then what we're looking at on page 1. And for the record, the report is 2 pages.
Yes. At the very top of the page 1 is the laboratory number, the investigating officer, the agency complaint number, our record number, date and time it was received in the laboratory, and the date that the report was completed. It lists nature of the offense, as what file class the evidence came in under. List the victim's name as Stermer, Todd Joseph. And then I have evidence received, which are assigned a specific item number. 30196-07-7AD is the known reference sample from Todd Stermer. 30196-07-7-BD was identified to me as LV1 bumper fascia. 30196-07-7-CD was identified as LV-3 metal box on underside. 30196-07-7-DD was identified to me as item LV-5 driver's side U-bolts, and 30196-07-7-ED was identified to me as item LV-6 spare tire.
And then is the next section the results of your examination?
The results of examination lists that I extracted the DNA and used what's called polymerase chain reaction to look at those specific areas of the DNA molecule as they're listed on the results of the examination.
And then were you able to form a conclusion based on your examination?
Yes, I was.
And that conclusion is listed on there as well?
Yes.
And could you then state for the jury what your conclusion was with regard to these samples?
I determined that the DNA profile from the evidentiary samples, 7BD, 7CD, 7DD, and 7ED, that is the bumper fascia, the metal box on the underside, the driver's side U-bolts, and the spare tire. The DNA profile from those evidentiary samples matched the DNA profile obtained from the known sample of Todd Stermer.
I'm going to go to page 2. Could you go through this section and what this means for the jury?
On page 2, I reported out population statistics. Anytime there's association made, a probative association made, we provide a population statistic, which will put a weight to the match or the inclusion of those samples. So in this case, I did a population statistic for the 4 evidentiary samples I received. The way we report it out is the probability of selecting an unrelated individual, unrelated to Todd Stermer, that would match those samples for the Caucasian database would be 1 in 13.7 quadrillion. For the African American database, 1 in 1.1 quintillion, and for Hispanics, 1 in 214.6 quadrillion.
So just to simplify that a little bit, if I just focus on the Caucasian equation there. It's 1 in 13.7 quadrillion?
Correct.
And that would be then to say that the individual would have that chance of matching Todd's DNA as a Caucasian?
It's not saying that there is one person in 13.7 quadrillion. It's saying that the probability of selecting an unrelated individual out of the population that would match those DNA profiles from the evidentiary samples would be 1 in 13.7 quadrillion.
And so I have a hard time imagining what quadrillion is. Could you tell me that's a 1 with how many zeros after it?
1 quadrillion would be 15 zeros.
And so here we're looking at 13.7 quadrillion.
So it would be 137 and 14 zeros
after that. And so based on the population statistics and your analysis and your examination, that led to your conclusion that those 4 samples, unknown samples, matched the known sample of Todd Stermer.
That's correct.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would have agreed that that was Todd Stermer's DNA. All they had to do was ask. So I don't have.
Your Honor,
I do have one question, 2 questions.
Continue the commentary, please.
I will.
Okay. You have a question for the witness?
I do.
Thank you.
Do you know what caused the fire?
I do not.
Do you know where the fire started in the house?
I do not.
Thank you.
Did you smell fuel?
Jury, do you have any questions of her? No? Thank you. May she be excused from her subpoena, counsel?
I ask that she please be excused, Your Honor.
She may be excused, Your Honor.
Okay.
That was
Thank
so
you.
dirty. If you had
I'll
just
take
asked
your,
us, we would have stipulated. You wouldn't have had to call this expert in.
Thank you.
If you would have just asked us, we'd have agreed.
Thank you, Your Honor.
It was his
Call
blood.
Troy Ernst to the stand, please.
You want to stipulate on this one too? That wasn't nice. Yeah. It shows they're bickering in front of the jury. Oh man. Fun times. It was rude. It was very rude.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please have a seat, and once you get settled in, we'll have you move the microphone right up to your mouth so the jury can hear you, and tell us your full name and spell the last, please.
My name is Troy Ernst, E-R-N-S-T.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Ernst, what is your current occupation?
I'm a forensic scientist with the Michigan State Police in the Grand Rapids Forensic Laboratory.
And how long have you been in that position?
For 26 years.
And what duties have you been assigned to in that position?
I'm a forensic scientist in the Trace Evidence Unit. As part of that, I receive evidence involved in criminal investigations, analyze the evidence, write reports, and when called upon, testify to those results.
Does trace evidence include evidence pertaining to fires?
Yes, fire debris or ignitable liquid residue testing.
So that's all part of trace evidence?
It is.
What type of education do you have for this position?
I have a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Michigan State University, also a master's degree in criminal justice with a specialization in forensic science, also from Michigan State.
What type of training then do you need on top of your formal education?
The training that I've received has been mostly on-the-job training, training under senior analysts in the different examinations that I perform, and also external training going for either a single day or up to a week-long training on the different instruments that I use and the different types of evidence I analyze.
And then how long have you worked in Trace Evidence Unit?
26 years.
26 years. And have you been qualified as an expert in trace evidence and in fire scene analysis in courts before?
Not fire scene, but fire debris analysis. Yes.
Fire debris analysis?
Yes.
Do you know how many times you've been qualified as an expert in those areas?
17 in fire debris.
17 in what?
In fire debris analysis.
In fire debris. And then how about the trace evidence unit umbrella? The same number or a different number?
Overall, I've been an expert witness 75 times.
Do you recall what courts or what counties?
Around the state of Michigan and even in a couple of other states, including in this county.
And as part of preparation for this testimony, did you give me your current curriculum vitae?
I did.
And does it list out all your education, your training, your position, and various sorts of instructions and things that you've given in your career?
Yes, it does.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 16. Do you recognize that?
Yes, it's a copy of my CV.
And it's in the same condition as when you gave it to me, no alterations.
I don't see any alterations.
Your Honor, at this time, I would move to admit People's Exhibit number 16 into evidence.
Any objection, Mr. Miller? Okay, court will receive Exhibit 16, CD.
And at this time, Your Honor, I would move to admit Mr. Ernst as an expert in fire debris analysis and in trace evidence.
No objection.
Court will receive his testimony as an expert in fire debris analysis and trace evidence.
Cross will be spicy on this one, I think.
Were you part of the team that investigated with the Van Buren County Sheriff's Department a fire that occurred in January of 2007?
Yes.
Were you present when the van was searched on January 9th of 2007?
I was.
And what was your role then with the van?
As I recall, my role was mostly photography.
So you basically just took pictures of the van at that point?
That's what I recall my role being, yes.
Did you also have the opportunity to analyze items submitted to you by Sergeant Leroy from MSP's Fire Marshal Division as part of this investigation?
Yes.
Do you recall what type of items those were?
Mostly these were clothing items, and then there was a gasoline can.
So clothing and gasoline can. Do you know how many items?
There were 11 items.
And could you explain to the jury then how numbers are assigned to those?
The way we assigned numbers back then was we typically used the agency who submitted the evidence would have numbers on them, and we would use their numbers.
We would just use everyone else's numbers. We didn't have our own. Just cleaning my camera a little bit. It was dusty.
Marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 17. I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 17. Do you recognize this item?
We got some actual evidence here. He's like, no, doesn't ring a bell.
It looks like what is marked as my item number 1.
And do you recall what your item number 1 would have been generically titled?
May I refer to my notes?
Would that help refresh your memory?
It would.
Yes. If you could just look at your report and then look up.
Generically, it was gray sweatpants.
And next one.
You have to mute every time the two attorney tables talk to each other. We're not allowed to hear those discussions. Don't shake it. It's not a Christmas present.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 18. And do you recognize that item?
Based on the markings, this is my item number 2.
And what is that generic description?
Gas can.
It's a red gas can.
And Your Honor, may the record be clear, there's 2 exhibit stickers. One is dated from many years ago, one is dated for today. I didn't want to tamper with the evidence in any way.
Okay.
Jury's saying, what, many years ago? This is an exhibit many years ago? What? He was shaking it to see if there was any gas left over.
What's been admitted is People's Exhibit number 3. And you recognize this item.
That gas can's not legal
This
to sell
is
anymore.
what I label as my item number 3.
It doesn't have a safety
And
spout.
generically, what is that labeled as?
Sweater from Linda. Sweater, pants, socks from Linda.
That actually was admitted already as People's Exhibit number 3. I'm going to show you what's been admitted as, or excuse me, what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 19. Do you recognize this?
Yes, this is my item number 4.
Your item number 4?
Yes,
And what is the generic description on that?
a tan coat.
Tan coat. Tan coat.
We'll see if they're able to bring in the red towels. What's this? He looks red. Could these be they? The gasoline-soaked towels from the basement.
I'm going to show you then what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 20.
Do you want to smell them, sir? Just give it a whiff.
And do you recognize this item?
I can see that I have my initials on here. I don't see any other tags of mine on here right now.
Oh no! That's a chain of custody issue. And that won't be coming.
I recognize my initials are inside of the package, but I don't have any of my item number showing right now on this package.
If we opened the package, would you be able to read it?
Possibly, yes.
There's going to be objection here.
I'm going to take it back from you. You have the deputy.
They must have been
For the record to be
retested.
clear, I'll have the deputy then open the sealed package.
Sorry if it smells like gasoline in here in a minute, guys. Slothtilica. Just want to say my new name from Adam. Just want you to say my new name from Adam. Slothtilica. Where are the gloves? Glove up.
I'm going to give you a pair of gloves as well. And if you can take that out and see if you can
It's
use
probably
the markings.
what's probably happened here while we listen to the ASMR
With anything.
is that it was retested, and when it was rebagged, the original label was concealed inside the new bag. So that's what he's looking for. There's the old bag.
Yes, on this I see it's my item number 5.
And what is that the generic name for?
It's a red sweatshirt.
Red sweatshirt,
Your
not
Honor,
a towel.
just not so I don't confuse the record, I'm going to go ahead and ask the court to admit these, and then I'll continue. So people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 19, number 18, number 17, and number 20 into evidence at this time.
Any objection? No? No objection?
Thank you, Your Honor.
Receive those into evidence.
Object, you should have done it numerically in value, lowest to highest. No towels yet.
I'm going to show you what's been marked then as People's Proposed Exhibit number 21.
This isn't evidence
And
for it.
you recognize this item?
You want to change your gloves out?
Yes, my item number is 6 on this one. And it is shirt and towels.
Your Honor, the people would move to admit People's Exhibit 21 into evidence at this time.
Shirt and towels.
Any objection or
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No objection.
No objection? Okay, we'll receive 21.
And I'm going to show you what's been marked as 22, People's Exhibit 22, brown shirt. Do you recognize this item?
Cameraman, you got one job here.
This one is my item number 7. And it is a brown shirt.
Your Honor, people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 22 into evidence.
Any objection? Okay, court will receive Exhibit 22.
Going back to the evidence locker one more time. Let's grab another bag. Label it. Hand it over.
I'm going to show you then Exhibit number 25. And if you could identify that.
Did you catch when she handed him the brown shirt? She said brown shirt. Oh, she giveth and she taketh away. The gifts are being removed now.
This is my item number 8. And it's a metal paint can labeled as Todd Stermer's underwear.
Your Honor, people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 23 into evidence at this time.
23, did you say?
Paint
23.
can.
Or 25? you
It
said
must be the
before.
burned remains. Was it?
But I don't have a 23. Yeah, you said 25, but I think you're at 23.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, it's 23. I
Okay.
apologize.
So any objection to 23?
No, Your Honor. In fact, we'll stipulate to save some time to 9, 10, and 11.
Thank you.
Okay. Court will receive 23.
Imagine the jury has really perked up their ears at this point and paying close attention. Ooh, those could be towels.
24, 25, and 26. And then what are these then on your report? So 24 would be?
My item number 9.
25 would be your?
Item 10.
And I have here, oh, these go together, so this would be item 26. I'm sorry, People's Proposed Exhibit number 26. What item is that of yours?
I'm unable to see any markings of mine on this, so I can't tell you right now.
Do you believe if I opened it up, you'd be able to find them?
If this came into me, then yes.
Oh, actually, could they be on this container? On the container that goes with it?
This was my item number 11.
So all these items then were given to you for analysis, is that correct?
Assuming that this used to be in here, then yes.
And when you receive items that have potential ignitable liquids, is it common to package them in paint cans?
Paint cans is one of the acceptable ways to package them, yes.
And what are the other ways then that are acceptable to package them in?
Nylon bags is the other most common way that we receive them, and then you can package them in a glass jar if it's sealed well.
And because there are still a few sealed gas cans, I'm going to remove some of these items then from your area. And I'm going to have the detective actually open up those paint cans just so that we can be sure what is in those paint cans. I believe we have 1, 2, 3 paint cans there. So may the record reflect that I'm going to have the detective open up the paint cans for 24, People's Exhibit 24, People's Exhibit number 25, and I believe the one that goes with it. So I'm just going to have them open up the 2 paint cans. Yes, they were. I think he stipulated to admitting all of them.
Thank you.
So 24.
And you don't have to remove anything. If you just want to tell me what is in that paint can.
It looks like a rolled up sock is in this one.
And then I'll have you do the other one as well.
Okay.
Told you it was going to be an ASMR day.
This one also looks like it's a sock.
Another rolled up sock.
Yes.
So you received these 11 items then for analysis, is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you tell me then what type of testing you did on these 11 items?
The testing that I perform on this, I extract the ignitable liquid residues, and then I use gas chromatography mass spectrometry to separate and then detect what compounds are present in those materials.
So it gives you a sort of a printout then when you actually then are conducting this test?
What it does is, as this mixture of compounds goes through the GC, the gas chromatograph, it separates into compounds, and it takes some compounds longer to get through than others. And so at the end, I end up with what's called a chromatogram of several different peaks on a printout, yes.
And then you analyze those peaks on that printout?
I compare those to reference ignitable liquids that I've also collected using the same method.
And after you did the testing on these 11 items, were you able to then form an opinion with regard to the analysis?
Yes, I was.
And did you give me a lab report then detailing out all 11 items in your findings?
I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Pickles proposed exhibit number 27.
We object, Your Honor. Under MRE 703 for the same reason we talked about last week. The underlying data, in fact, and it shall be in evidence under 703. Unless it's in evidence, he can't opine.
Your Honor, he has actually provided it to defense counsel, and I believe he has copies as well of all the printouts.
With him?
The rule says it shall be in evidence.
Or it can come into evidence later at the court's discretion. So do you intend to introduce it, or can you
I can, Your
introduce it?
Honor. Do you have copies of all those printouts?
I do.
Yes. And they were actually used for your analysis then of the results?
Correct.
And how many pages is that?
May I refer to it?
Yes.
Without counting, it's that thick.
And may I take a copy of those?
You may.
I'm just going to use the court's copy machine. 10 cents a page.
I'll allow you to keep questioning, and then we can introduce that. I assume there's no objection to its introduction, Mr. Mueller?
Your Honor, I don't know that there's been a foundation laid as to what those charts are and what they represent. If she lays that foundation, then I don't think there would be an objection. But all this is just pages of paper until he explains it. And how he got,
I do believe he's already talked
to
about
his opinions.
He's already talked about the gas chromatography that he's already done, and the printouts and how he uses it for his analysis. But I'm happy to go into have more discussion or further detail or testimony about it.
I think enough of a foundation's been made, so once we get it, you can introduce it then.
Thank you, Your Honor. We'll go ahead and mark his graphs then as item number 28. I'm going to give you your copy back. You've received a copy from MSP. Would you like another?
I'll put a marked up one. We don't need to do it now.
Yes, he already has been provided copies. Thank you, Your Honor. So I'm going to show you then what's marked as People's Proposed Exhibit number 28. And can you just tell the court what those are?
These are the chromatograms and comparisons that were printed out as part of the evaluation of what ignitable liquids may be present in the samples that were submitted to me.
So this is after you've run all 11 items. These are the graphs that are printed from your analysis.
Correct.
And then you use these graphs to then interpret this data and make your findings.
That's correct.
Your Honor, I move to admit People's Exhibit number 28 into evidence at this time.
Your objection's noted. Any other objection, Mr. Mueller?
None,
Okay.
what's already been noted.
Thank you. Court receives Exhibit 28 into evidence.
So based on Exhibit 28, with your data, were you able then to form an opinion with regard to analysis of these 11 items?
Yes.
And did you then put that into a report detailing out your findings for all 11 items?
I did.
I think I've already showed defense counsel. So I'm going to show you what's been marked as People's Proposed Exhibit 27. And do you recognize that?
Yes, this is a copy of my lab report for this case.
And Your Honor, people would move to admit People's Exhibit number 27 into evidence at this time.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I believe there are MS charts as well. And if he has those, then you wouldn't have a problem. That's at least what we learned from the last witness, who was a chemist like Mr. Ernst.
Objections noted. I'll overrule it. I think sufficient foundation's been laid. So you may admit 27.
27, thank you. Permission to publish?
You may.
I'm going to put this in front of you so you can actually read it while I put it up on the screen. So is this page 1 then of your report? Is there just one page?
I believe there's just one page to this report.
Just one page.
Yes.
So we have the report then displayed. Can you just start at the top and go through then your findings with these 11 items?
Do you want me to start with the results?
However is easiest for you.
Okay. The larger block on this page is evidence received, and that just details what I received from the agency. Below that are the results. And what it states is gas chromatographic mass spectrometric analysis of items 1, 2, 8, 9, 10, and 11 show the presence of gasoline.
And I'm going to stop you there. Can you go through what each of those items are generically called?
Item 1 is gray sweatpants. Item 2, 1 gallon red plastic gasoline can. Item 8, underwear. Item 9, left sock. Item 10, right sock. And item 11, shirt.
Those are the items that tested positive for what?
For gasoline.
For gasoline. And then now if you want to continue then with your other analysis.
Gasoline.
GCMS analysis of items 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 did not show the presence of any identifiable liquid petroleum products.
And just can you run through briefly then what the generic descriptions of those items are?
Item 3 was the sweater, pants, socks of Linda Stermer. 4 was the tan coat. 5 was the red sweatshirt. 6 was the blue shirt and white towel. And item 7 was brown shirt.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the testing for gasoline versus other types of oils, fuel oils. Does gasoline show particular characteristics that would be separate from, say, a fuel oil, lamp oil, or a kerosene oil?
Yes, those are all different categories of ignitable liquids. Gasoline has a wide range of types of compounds in it, and it includes classes such as alkanes and aromatics and naphthalenes. Fuel oil, that's typically a petroleum distillate, so that's a different class of chemicals that comprises that material. Lamp oil can be a petroleum distillate, it can be a naphthenic paraffinic, it can be a normal alkane, and so those are different classes of ignitable liquids that we have references for and we can compare to, but gasoline is different from all of those.
So I just want to talk a little bit about, are you familiar with the types of fuel oil that are used in furnaces?
I don't know. I would want to have a sample to test to find out what it is, but off the top of my head, I wouldn't want to speculate.
Okay. And I want to talk to you a little bit about, were you aware that there were certain items that were placed into a body bag in this case that you tested?
Yes, I did hear that.
And do you recall or know what items were placed in the body bag?
My understanding was items 8, 9, 10, 11, and 1.
So 8, 9, 10, 11, and 1. Can you give me the generic descriptions?
Underwear, left sock, right sock, shirt, and gray sweatpants.
And so were you able to then distinguish, and I guess I'm going to ask you in layperson's terms, the density of the amount of gasoline on those items, and if it would have been possible to transfer gasoline from one item to another?
Quantifying the amount of ignitable liquid present is not something that I am capable of doing with the tests that we do. So to that part, no, I can't quantify that. Could you repeat the second part of that question?
Can you talk to the jury about, since these items may have been placed together, what would be the opportunity to have one item then transfer gasoline onto another item?
If they're all packaged together and there's not good airflow that can escape, then under the conditions such as room temperature, sealed up fairly well, I would expect that any gas on one item would be able to transfer through the air to another, or if it has liquid present, then it can directly through touch transfer gasoline from one sample to another. The longer you would have it sealed together, the more likely there could be transfer among those different items.
Was there any difference in the testing that you saw on your graphs between the shirt and the socks and underwear?
May I refer to my notes?
Would that help refresh your memory?
It would.
Yes. And actually, I do think I have some of your graphs in a short form from an email that you sent me, if that helps refresh your memory as well.
Depending on which email or which graphs those are.
Yeah, let's take a look at this. The graphs that you sent to me.
And those are reference gasoline samples. Those aren't the item samples. So that doesn't answer this particular question.
I understand. Okay. So the particular graphs that I have here are just the generic?
Yes, those are reference gasoline samples that I've collected to be able to compare to fire debris samples.
How were the generic gasoline tables that you provided to me, how were those used in this analysis of these items?
When we receive things and we test them for ignitable liquids and we compare them to reference ignitable liquids that we've collected, we don't just compare them to the fresh gasoline, for instance, but we also take that fresh gasoline and evaporate it to different volumes. So you can have 50% evaporated gasoline, because what happens is you lose some of the components of gas, but not all of them. And so the gas chromatograph shifts over how much evaporation there's occurred for that sample. So we have reference samples of neat gasoline, which is fresh gasoline, 50% evaporated, 80% evaporated, 90% evaporated, 95% evaporated, 98% evaporated gasoline to be able to compare to the fire debris samples. Because those chromatograms look different from one to another. They have a lot of the same peaks, a lot of the same compounds, but a different ratio of those compounds. So the references that are on that chart show the difference between, I believe it's a fresh gasoline, 80% evaporated, and 95% evaporated gasoline. And that's what is on that.
And why would that be important?
Why that is important is because when you have samples that, if there was gas on one sample but not on others and they got packaged together, the compounds that transfer easiest are the lighter ones, the ones that that evaporate at lower temperatures. And so if you have a transfer by air, you're going to get more of the lighter compounds compared to the heavier compounds that transfer from one to another. And so the expectation that I would have then is the sample that has the lightest compounds as the strongest would be the one that received the transfer rather than started with the gas and transferred to the ones that have heavier compounds. So that was the reason why I wanted to look at the 80 and 95% evaporated and compare those to the samples that I had on this case.
So what samples had the heavier compounds in this case?
This is important.
The heaviest was item 10.
Which is?
The right sock.
Linda's sock.
And then items 8, 9, and 1 had approximately the same level of evaporation that compared well to these samples.
And those are 8, 9, and 1. What are those the generic names for?
1 is the gray sweatpants, 8 is the underwear, and 9 is the left sock. And then the shirt, item 11, had the lighter compounds out of those samples.
So just to keep it in layperson's terms, your expectation then when analyzing those for lighter compounds versus heavier compounds with relation to how they could transfer, could you put that in lay terms with the items, the generic item numbers or item descriptions?
So based on the data that I'm looking at, and assuming that they were packaged in a similar way and were in the same temperature afterwards, then the expectation I would have is that if there was a sample that didn't have gas on it originally and had it transferred to it, or if it had it also could have had could have had gasoline present on it already, but if that's not a consideration, then it would be item 11, which would be the shirt that has the lighter compounds. So that would be the one that I would expect would have received the transfer, not given the transfer compared to the others.
Compared to the socks, underwear, and sweatpants.
Correct.
I have no further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
When we approach.
Okay, interesting stuff. This gasoline is a problem for defense because it is not heating oil. It is not kerosene. It is not anything that should be used. We talked about the flash point and how gasoline at negative 45 degrees Fahrenheit puts off enough gas to flash combust. That's why you don't use it in the house. And him having that all over inside is a big problem. So now the state has to basically say, now this has come in, he was covered in gasoline, that he did it himself. Unfortunately, Linda's told like 4 different stories, one of which was, Linda, run, the house is on fire, get out. And the other one was, if I can't have you, then none shall. So I'm not sure what they're going to believe. It's the Post-it note. Let's see if they, I think he asked the judge if he could do this. Satisfying little clip. It's back, Catherine, you're right. It's back. Catherine Fallon, hello, how are you doing?
Your Honor, can we approach?
Your Honor, he's doing it again. He's got the big notepad, and look at this. It's taking up half the court. I thought we already talked about this. She's like, we did. Why are you bringing out the yellow pad again? He's like, this is important to visualize. I have to be able to illustrate. She's like, I don't know. I don't think you do.
I don't like podiums, Your Honor.
Use your words. Use your words. Yeah, she was going to object. If he has to take that back down and move it out, oh my goodness, he's going to be livid. He's already got his hand smacked on the line of questioning, where he was very, I would say he was rude to the judge, even stepped on the judge, saying, I'm just doing this. And the judge shut him down, and that was his entire line of questioning. She's going to allow it. No, she won't. It's gone. Oh. All you've got is, do you know where the fire started? You've got your two questions.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello.
I hope not to take too long late in the afternoon. I want to have some questions answered here. You and I have spoken before, I believe, in January of 2021. You remember we talked on the phone?
I do recall.
Okay. You told us, I think, earlier that MSGC is a qualitative test and analysis, correct?
I don't recall exactly what I have told you.
Is it a qualitative analysis as opposed to a numerical?
Yes and no. We do get numbers from it, so in some ways it can be, but in terms of identifying ignitable liquids, it is qualitative in that respect.
Okay, when we say qualitative, we mean a go, no-go test, correct?
It means rather than using numbers, you're using words. You're describing what is there or isn't there.
Right. Relative. It's either there or it's not there. It's positive or it's negative. Right?
To an extent, yes.
Okay. It's not like blood alcohol, 0.08% blood alcohol, 0.17, you're super drunk. Nothing like that, right?
It's not like that.
Okay. So here we have a test, this GCMS, right?
Yes.
Gas chromatograph mass spectrometry?
Yes.
Yes? All right. You showed some
close enough
GC charts, am I right?
I don't know if I showed them, but...
Well, they were admitted as an exhibit. Remember that
Yes.
over my objection?
Yes.
There are also, these are two separate parts of the test. There's a GC and then there's an MS, am I right?
Yes, the MS is the detector, and you can get compound information from it, yes.
Okay. And you have your MS charts here as well?
What I have are extracted ion profiles, which uses the mass spec data, but it sums certain ions that are particular for the different types of compounds that we're looking for in ignitable liquids.
Okay, so what you don't have, correct me if I'm wrong, the base data, you don't have those charts, or are they charts?
They're spectra. They're spectra.
Okay, spectra, what does that mean?
It's a series of peaks with numbers on them that indicate what mass fragments those individual compounds broke up into.
Okay. You, as an expert, have to analyze those, don't you?
For gasoline identification, that's using patterns compared to other references, and that uses the total ion chromatogram, which is a sum of all of those mass spec, and also extracted ion profiles, which are portions of those mass spectra.
So in regular layman's English, do you have to interpret that underlying data?
I have all of the patterns that are needed to interpret if gasoline is present or not in here.
Okay, it's one level up from the raw data, am I right?
Could you
We have the raw data, and then there's something like the ions you said, and that's based on the raw data?
What do you mean by the raw data?
The spectra you talked about.
Okay. So, again, the chromatogram that's a printout includes all of the mass spectra added together. The extracted ion profiles that I use to compare certain compounds, again, the patterns of the compounds, those also use the mass spectral data. In gasoline identification, there isn't the requirement that you have to identify what each of these peaks are. The capability is there to identify what these peaks are on this chromatogram, but it's a comparison of these chromatograms and extracted ion profiles to reference ones. So I do have all of the data that are necessary for the identification.
Okay, and it's just gasoline, am I right? You call it gasoline, as opposed to fuel oil, which might be some mid-level liquid, ignitable liquid, fair?
Fuel oil would be typically a petroleum distillate, a heavy petroleum distillate from my recollection, and that would use a similar process of the chromatograms, the patterns of peaks, and the extracted ion profiles.
This GCMS test, it is extremely sensitive, isn't it?
It is sensitive.
And is it based on volume per volume? As
What do you
you're
mean
analyzing?
volume?
Well, what are the units?
What are the units of what?
When you're analyzing an GCMS test, you're using a sample of something.
So the printouts are in relative abundance, and these are in counts. So however many counts of that at that retention time, at that number of minutes since it got injected into the column, how long that took to come out, however many counts are hitting the mass spec at that point, that's the top number on the chromatogram.
Okay. Let's talk about how sensitive this machine is. Am I correct? It's 0.005%?
Or better.
You mean or more sensitive than that?
Yes, or more sensitive, yes.
Like what would that or better be? You're the one who's running these tests.
So the typical daily test we do to make sure the instrument is working properly, the mixture we have is at 0.005% volume to volume. And all of the peaks that are in that, all of the compounds that are in that sample are readily detected as long as the instrument is working properly.
Okay. So 0.005%, if we translate that out to a number, it's 0.00005, right?
Correct.
5 10,000s, correct?
Without having it written down, I wouldn't want to.
Tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 5 100,000s.
Okay.
5 100,000s. That's sensitive, correct?
Yes, but in terms of...
For the threshold. For the threshold to sense gasoline, correct?
To sense a peak.
A peak. That you're going to end up, I just want to say, where you end up saying it's positive, are we on the same page? It would have had to exceed that 0.00005 threshold, fair?
It's getting really technical here.
That's the sensitivity, or that's the concentration of our reference sample that we say our method has to detect these peaks at that concentration.
So if it's detecting a peak to where you would say it's positive, that means it's exceeded that peak.
For that compound, yes.
But you can't tell us how much gasoline was on any one item of clothing that tested positive. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
And you said you can have transfer of gasoline, for example, from one item of clothing to another, touch transfer, fair?
Yes.
And also atmospheric transfer, right?
That's correct.
I think you said if you assume that they were packaged the same way and kept together?
In terms of if they were in the same general area from the time they got packaged up until the time that I tested them. I can't control that part.
And you can't control, and you are not aware of how the clothing was on Todd Stermer, if it was on Todd Stermer.
That's correct.
You also don't know how it was packaged from the scene once it was taken off of Todd Stermer, correct?
That's correct.
Number 11, that red shirt, which we've identified as Mike Matheny's shirt, you got it as shirt.
Sure.
And number 1 and number 8, 9, I think, and 10?
Yes.
All were positive, right?
For gasoline, yes.
Right. You can't rule out, based on the evidence you have and just the knowledge you have, you can't rule out the logical possibility that maybe there was a transfer from Matheny's clothes to the other closet item.
I think this witness understands who owns the clothes. It's just the type of clothing. So if he could refer to it by the item number, that would be helpful.
That would be better. Let me try that. Item number 11, the red shirt, tested positive. So did the sweatpants, number 1. So did the underwear, number 8. So did number 9, the sock, left sock, and 10, the right sock, right? Or vice versa.
Correct.
All right. As you sit here, you have no evidence that can rule out the logical possibility that number 11 could have transferred gasoline to the other items. Fair?
Because of the complexity involved, I can't say how it did happen, so that's fair.
Okay. And you certainly, and I appreciate your candor because you told the jury that you weren't going to speculate, right?
Correct.
Because an expert should never speculate, right?
Correct.
Because if you offer speculation as an expert opinion, what you're doing is misleading the reader, aren't you? Or the listener.
That can happen.
Okay. And no reasonable person, man of science, woman of science, would do that, correct?
I can't speak for everybody.
You certainly wouldn't.
I try not to.
I like this guy's responses.
The gasoline, assuming it was on the sweatpants, item number 1, you've already said you don't know how much gasoline could have been on there, correct?
I don't have a volume, correct.
Right. You don't know where the sweatpants were when gasoline might have gotten on it.
Correct.
How the gasoline might have gotten on it.
I don't know that.
How long the gasoline might have been there before you tested it.
Correct.
Right? I mean, you can't tell, or maybe you can, but you can't tell if the gasoline that you were testing were on those sweatpants for a week, 2 weeks, 30 minutes. Fair?
No, I can't do that.
You can't do any of that, and to do that would be speculate, right?
Correct.
Which no reasonable, or at least you would never do, right?
I try not to.
All right.
He's not phasing this witness at all.
You did look at item number, I believe it was number 3. If you look down there, it'd be Linda Stermer's clothing.
Yes.
Linda Stermer's clothing tested negative for any gasoline. True?
There were no identifiable liquid petroleum products on those clothing.
So as sensitive as your machine is, Linda Stermer's clothing didn't even meet that threshold. Fair?
That's fair.
And as it relates to contamination, I think you mentioned contamination on direct exam. You try to prevent that, right?
Yes, we try to prevent that.
By all means.
Yes.
Right? Because you don't want to unduly influence or wreck the results of a test, the integrity of a test, right?
That's correct.
That's why you have strict chain of custody.
Yes.
Yes. You don't throw clothes on top of clothes. You separate them out into individual evidence bags, don't you? Or containers.
We analyze them how they come in. Whatever packaging they're in, that's how they get analyzed.
So sometimes you might get clothing that's packaged together 2 at a time.
Correct.
Like a towel and a shirt.
Yes.
Like we saw in this case.
Yes.
And you, before the clothes that you analyze were brought to you, you don't know how they were individually packaged, or strike that, not packaged, but individually stored and collected. Fair?
That's fair.
Can you have false positives on a GCMS test? Is that possible?
That is not something that we would have as a false positive. That would be a contamination, but that we have blanks that we run frequently. We have quality control checks that would detect that and prevent that.
The gasoline, we didn't talk about a gasoline can, that 1 gallon can we saw. Remember that?
Yes.
That little 1 gallon can, that's enough.
That tested positive for gasoline, correct?
It did.
As one would expect from a gasoline can. You were talking about fresh gas, 85% gas, or 85% not diluted, what was the word?
Evaporated.
Evaporated. 90% evaporated, right?
Yes.
Do you know what the rate of that gas was in terms of evaporation?
I compared it to one of the evaporated states, and it compared well with one of them. I would have to look to see what it was mostly similar to. It was most similar to a 70% evaporated gasoline reference.
What does that tell us? What does that mean to us?
What that means is the compounds that were lighter than what are left at the 70% level had been evaporated off. And so it could be that there was still liquid gas in there, but 70% of it had been evaporated. And so I would be testing the rest. Or it could be that it had been poured out and whatever residue was still there had evaporated off to 70% evaporated, and that's when I received it.
And in terms of time, can you talk about what that means, 70% evaporation?
That depends on the temperature mostly that it's at. So I can't talk about time.
Say room temperature.
As itself.
What are we talking about? When we're talking about 70% gasoline, are we talking about like old gas versus the fresh gas you talked about?
So 70% evaporated means 70% of it is gone by the time I would analyze it then. So yes, that wouldn't be fresh gas anymore. That would be mostly evaporated gas, but still liquid left.
Okay. Certainly wouldn't be gas from 4 hours before out of a gas tank or out of a gas pump. Fair?
I don't know what conditions that has been in for 4 hours.
Okay. Like when I try to start my snowblower and I haven't used the fresh fuel, the fuel saver, that would be
not a sponsor.
Greatly evaporated gas, wouldn't it?
Depends on the conditions it was stored in.
Okay. Give me 1 second, Your Honor.
You didn't get much from this witness. State's going to come back around. Witness was very good at not speculating.
A pair of sweatpants, right? Male sweatpants. Can you tell based on your testing where on the pants the gasoline may have been?
No, I can't.
Right. And finally, can you test with your GCMS machine blends of gasoline, like different octanes you can distinguish?
Good question.
If I'm comparing fresh gas to fresh gas, some of the premium have different additives in them that can be detected, but most of those are lighter, and so by the time it gets evaporated, then it pretty much looks the same.
But if it was fresh gas to fresh gas, for example, like the Sunoco, could you compare Sunoco blend versus Shell?
While I could compare it, what I'm trying to do is identify, is it gasoline? So it's not comparing. We don't do comparisons of gas to determine could it have come from this gas station or a different one.
All right, just so simply gasoline versus some other liquid fuel.
Some other ignitable liquid, yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Thank you.
Just real briefly, Your Honor. What types of things make gasoline evaporate faster?
Higher temperature does. That's the biggest one. And you said faster, not just more of it.
Faster or more?
More time and better airflow.
So if something's exposed to air or outside, it would evaporate more?
Yes, it would.
If something's exposed to heat or fire, it would evaporate more?
Yes.
If something's left out overnight with a cap on versus with a cap off, would that affect the evaporation rates?
It would affect it if the cap's on versus off, yes.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Boom. Okay.
It would evaporate more easily in higher temperatures, right? Higher heat, higher temperature?
Correct.
All right, so if we're in something that's being stored outside or in 32-degree weather, that wouldn't evaporate nearly as quickly as something that might be in room temperature.
Assuming the same other storage conditions, correct.
Yeah. And can you, with your GCMS, tell if the gas that was in the can was the same gasoline that was on the sweatpants, or it's just gasoline is gasoline?
I can just tell it's gasoline in both.
That's enough.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're now past.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, any questions of him? Okay, we'll retrieve those.
We're past the point where the judge said we have a hearing, right? So the hearing she has later tonight was supposed to start at 4:30. It's now 4:48, and we've got to move things along here. I don't think we finished. Did we get the other two witnesses? Were there two? I think we just got one. Yeah, he who talks last wins, I think is what they're going for here. Courtroom is beautiful. A little echoey. It needs some sound dampening panels on the walls. And maybe some, some floor coverings would help as well. Flames may dissipate gas. See, the problem is I don't understand if what he's saying with the gasoline evaporating is he talking about gasoline evaporating as the quantity of liquid gas burns? Because the hotter the liquid gas gets, the more it evaporates. So is that what he's talking about? But usually if there's liquid gas present, the flame's not going to go out. I mean, he wouldn't just like run outside and the fire would go out. If there's liquid gas, it would stay burning. What happened to had the witness that got hauled to court by the sheriff? She's getting a hotel tonight, and she's going to be testifying tomorrow. Let's listen and see what the judge has to say.
Questions? No objection from the lawyers. Can you please describe how a sample is extracted from a piece of cloth?
So the way the extraction of the ignitable liquid residue is done from cloth or whatever sample is inside of a bag or a paint can is in 2007, what we would do is we would put that bag or the paint can into an oven, heat it up to typically 80 or 85 degrees Celsius, leave it in there for 30 to 60 minutes until everything is quite hot. And then I would have a hypodermic needle that had activated charcoal and cotton inside of it. And I would hook that up to a vacuum line. And when I took that sample out of the oven, I would then put the hypodermic needle into that sample and it would suck out all of the atmosphere, all of the air around that sample. And any of the ignitable liquid residue would adsorb to the active charcoal in that tube. And then I take that charcoal and I elute it with a solvent that strips off all of those ignitable liquid residues into a solvent that then gets injected to the GC.
Okay, juror, I'll admit I don't necessarily understand this question. It's beyond my science ability, but I'm going to ask you it anyway. You'll probably understand it. For GLMS analysis, are compounds' molecular makeup, i.e. parent and fragment molecules, specific to one compound and identified by matching to the reference sample?
I'll do my best to answer that. So what happens is when a sample goes through the gas chromatograph to the mass spectrometer and it goes through an electron beam and breaks apart into different fragments, those fragments are typical of that particular compound, but also to other compounds that are similar in structure. And so you can have some mass spectra that are mostly similar to each other, but there can be small differences even between compounds that are fairly closely related to each other. So some compounds you can get, that is the only compound that you would expect that mass spectrum to have, and others can share pretty similar mass spectra. I hope I answered the question that was asked.
Okay. And what was the date that you performed the testing?
January 11 and January 12 are the dates that I had the evidence in my possession of 2007.
So then the question is, and were all 11 items tested the same day?
Yes, they were.
And how long did you have the samples before you tested?
I received them, they were dropped off to the lab on January 11, and I actually started testing that very same day.
And then you continued to the next day?
And I was done with my analysis by the 12th, so the instrument, the GC, would have run overnight, and then I would have interpreted the data in the morning.
Okay. Counsel, any questions in light of those questions and answers?
I just had one.
Okay.
I don't understand. When you had the compounds you said that could test similarly, then is that where then you run the further testing then to differentiate them?
No, we typically don't need to further differentiate individual compounds. It's often done by patterns of these types of compounds and not just individual compounds, particularly for gas.
That's when you use the charts and you use the comparisons then to be able to distinguish those?
Yes, if I'm looking to identify one particular compound, such as acetone, then I would look at just that one compound and compare that to a reference.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Acetone, is that like fingernail polish remover?
I'm a little confused.
A little?
The way you package these items once you receive them, you with me? You package them, right?
I didn't package them.
Okay. The way they are packaged, can they evaporate within a day or two? You get a lot of evaporation or no?
No, the reason why nylon bags and paint cans are suitable for fire debris samples is because they don't allow evaporation.
Okay. So we can assume that in the 4 days, given that they were in paint cans, in the 4 days from the 7th to the 11th, that we wouldn't have much, if any, evaporation. Fair?
If they were properly sealed, then I wouldn't expect any.
Thank you.
Ms. Eiderbean, anything else?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Jury, any other questions? No questions. Is he excused from his subpoena, counsel?
Please be excused from this subpoena.
Okay. Thank you, sir. You're all done.
Thank you.
And I'll take that exhibit from you. I think the binder is your own, right? Was that binder admitted to?
That's binder is wrong. That is his binder. He just submitted his, of course, we get a copy of. And then does the court want me to hang on to the physical evidence?
Yes, please.
I'll have our detective hang on to the physical evidence.
You're all done. Thank you. Jury will obviously recess for the evening.
We're done for the day.
Remember my obnoxious rules, but do not watch any news media. Don't
do anything. Don't do anything I wouldn't do, the judge says to the jury. We are done for the day. Acetone is very flammable, extremely. Sealed containers, Timu. Random question. Usually the foreperson have to sign the notes when they deliberate. What if there's a problem with the foreperson that another jury would like to discuss? They can be raised with the bailiff. I believe if there's a problem with the foreperson, the other jurors can bring it straight to the bailiff. That was the best witness ever, stayed as ahead. They're winning. They're winning. They got in the gasoline, which was key. Gasoline should not be anywhere in that fire. But the problem is the state still has not proved that Linda is the one that used the gasoline. That is key. I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, it was a gasoline fire. But
to address between
We're
now
just
and tomorrow
going to
morning.
work out, now that we've jumbled up the order and Ms. Calhoun and everything else, we got to figure out the
Pardon?
line. We got to figure out the line for tomorrow, that's all.
Okay, I'll leave you two to that.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
she gone. Miss Calhoun, that's the one we're going to talk about tomorrow. The witness who was staying in a hotel tonight, stayed in the jail over the weekend because she skipped her subpoena, missed the first day of trial. She was the one that called 911 on the scene. She was an important early witness, didn't show up. So I didn't have a ride. The judge said, I don't care, you're going to jail. And by the way, we were testing you for drugs, and it came back positive, so she couldn't testify that day. She had to sober up a little bit. Anyway, good stuff. That's all coming tomorrow. The obnoxious, I didn't hear obnoxious. Are you now on part-time hours? No, I'm not. I've been busy. I've been working. I've been loading baseball bat beating trial videos up to the Top Mark Media channel. We have 2 up there. I'm loading a 70-something gigabyte file trial of part 1 up. I'll have part 2 going up as soon as that one's done. It's got another 31 minutes left, and then it has to render. So it'll be a while, but we'll have those up on the other channel. You heard obnoxious too? Could she have changed clothes? She was doing laundry. Yes, she could have changed clothes. Let's see. Misconduct. Good to have you here. Welcome. All right. Anything else? Tell you, I have got a splitting headache, and maybe it's because I've had the volume turned up too high. But it is just like I want to go grab a bite to eat and take an ibuprofen and then lay down and just close my eyes and not think about anything for a little bit. So that's my next thing on the agenda. So what better thing to do than play some music, right? We should probably play the quiet music. Should we do that? Should we end with ASMR? Let's see what we've got here. Let me. I've been playing music all day long. Let's see. I think this is it. Let's see. Is there music here? There we go. Welcome. This concludes another day of the sounds of justice. A new direction this channel is going to bring you everything about court that you can hear. Court and ASMR, we're just made for each other. That's why we have evidence. That's why we have evidence bags. Take a deep breath and let this evidence bag lull you into a warm, gentle place. All right, ASMR is over. ASMR is over. All right, the sounds of Canton. There we go. Here we go. Tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love and smile at someone. Make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe until we go live again tomorrow. We are not going to be doing ASMR tomorrow. It's not going to be ASMR. There's some tapping. I need to use both mics. I need to crank the gain up so you can hear all my mouth noises. And now, breathe deeply, letting the air fill your lungs. This is the worst way to end the day, for sure. Worst way to wake up from a nap. Mrs. R.A. says, dry run of ASMR channel, 3 out of 5 stars. Would not recommend. Definitely would not recommend. But verdict music tomorrow, possibly. Possibly. We'll see if we can get the other baseball videos up, because there's some fun videos up there that happened during the day. That was great. But did Stop and Shop a sponsor? No, but I sort of feel bad. This was sent to me, obviously, during the Karen retrial the first time around. And I've been a little rough with it. And now evidence can fall out the bottom. It's no longer the pristine evidence bag that it was when I got it. So it's got a big old tear and a few wrinkles that it didn't have before. Oh well, it's all good. It's all good. All right, you guys, have a great weekend. No, don't have a weekend yet. No. I said that last night as well, and you don't. I corrected myself. You don't need to tell me in chat. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. We'll be here. Have a good one. Bye-bye.